nights when we were younger, and we would never sleep. So let's forget about tomorrow and live for tonight while we're free. Touch the sky. Tonight we're coming alive. Touch the sky. Tonight we're coming alive. From the dust we will awaken, and life will fill our veins. But these are the moments that we live for. I can't keep it inside of me. Sunlight begins to fade now, and I feel like I'm losing time, but I don't know how I'm here. The sunlight is turned to gray, and I feel like I'm losing love again. I don't know how I'm here. I could feel your heartbeat. I could feel somewhere you're looking down. I could feel your heartbeat. I could feel somewhere you're looking down. 'Cause it's you I'm loving, and it's you that I wanna breathe. And it's you I'm loving, and it's you that I wanna need.
Hello everybody and welcome along to Simracersworld TV, and well, you join me and Peter MacKay in the commentary box here at Sebring for round 1 of the Simracersworld GT Evo series. And Peter, by the looks of it, we're in for an absolute mega night of racing.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you here, Jack, for this round one of the Simracersworld GT Evo series at one of my favourite circuits anywhere in the world, Sebring International Raceway, the home of American endurance racing and a track absolutely rich in heritage, particularly for sports car endurance racing. And that's exactly what we're going to do here tonight over the next 90 minutes.
Well, let's hope so. We've just joined the 25-minute practice session, of which we've got lots of cars out on circuit. So what we'll do is we'll have to have a look around to see who we've got out. We now have sounds from the simulator. So currently in provisional second place is this man here, Rob Thiessen for G-Drive Racing Exemia, and coming off a triple podium on the GT Pro Series last night. Going into the GT Evo Series, are you gonna say that G-Drive are looking for once again another podium?
Yeah, that's certainly a very good start. And looking at the times, Jack, I have to say that I can't believe that this is meant to be the kind of junior feeder series to the Pro Series, which started last night. Currently it's Fletcher sitting on pole right now with a 1 minute 56.1. That is not hanging about in any conditions at Sebring International Raceway. In fact, to give a little bit of context, that would have put you very, very high up the grid when the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship had their virtual equivalent here at Sebring about 4 or 5 months ago. So quite impressive pace already from our drivers.
Yeah, well, it's definitely showing, and we've got to remember that Billy Fletcher, our current provisional pole sitter, is one of the bronze drivers out on circuit. So you'll hear me and Peter throughout the night relate to different colours. Tonight we have the bronze and silver rated drivers. In the GT Pro Series, we've got the platinum and gold rated drivers, and by a general rule of thumb, the silver drivers are either marginally quicker or they've just got that extra little bit of experience over the bronze drivers. But it's really showing that that isn't necessarily the case, because Billy Fletcher, provisional pole sitter, is currently the fastest overall and naturally the fastest bronze driver, and he's followed up by 3 silver drivers. So he clearly knows something that nobody else does at the moment.
Yes, driver rankings, which we see in the real world as well in sports car racing, which emulates exactly the same system, platinum, gold, silver and bronze. And that system was brought in basically because in the real world, the sports car racing business model depends a lot on the gentleman driver or the amateur driver who pays for the privilege to be there and employs pro drivers to race along beside them. So we see at Le Mans, for example, you have the GTE AM category and the GTE Pro category. The cars are more or less identical, just the GTE AM cars are ever so slightly heavier, ever so slightly older usually, but virtually no difference at all. But the drivers are, in the GTE Pro class, that will be all platinum and maybe 1 or 2 golds, but mostly platinum and factory-employed drivers who have won at the highest level. In the GTE AM class, you can have 1 gold, I think it's 1 gold, 1 silver, and 1 bronze. And your bronze and silver drivers usually are either young and up-and-coming drivers or amateur drivers. And these driver rankings have, they met with mixed opinions, but here in the sim racing world, it's good to be able to ensure that you've always got a race to be in, dependent on your ability.
Yeah, and I think that really is the key here, because we are obviously all in GTE cars, so it's exactly the same specification. And although they might look, well, quite different from each other, for example, the BMW, quite a big car, it's got lots of bodywork, very closed, whereas if we relate it to maybe one of the Fords we've got out on circuit, for example, Anton Dupin for Flemish Simsport, you see that's quite open, lots of aero or visual aerodynamic trickery going on, and you can see the different flows of the bodywork over the car, and they look like quite different and almost opposite ends of the scale, but they are very, very closely matched. And I think that's just something that iRacing really do bring in very, very well with the constant balance of performance updates, just to make sure we really do get some close racing. And tonight, I think we're going to be treated to some of that, don't you?
Yeah, you could sometimes argue that iRacing get balance of performance more accurate than they do in the real world in the WEC. You could make arguments for that. Of course, we have 2 cars in the field today which really brought that balance of performance debate into front view. We've got the Ferrari 488 GT car and the Ford GT. And back in 2016, when Ford made the return after 50 years from winning their first Le Mans with the original Ford GT, they came into Le Mans and were able to improve their pace all of a sudden from testing to qualifying by nearly 5 seconds, which, to be honest, is unheard of. But also the Ferrari did the same, and that was very much, clearly the Ford and Ferrari were hiding their real pace. So the balance of performance method, if you like, is a good way of, like you say, a perfect way of describing it is getting, for example, a big car like the BMW M8, which is much more looking like a normal production car, and the Ford GT, which is absolutely a homologation special for motorsport and then sold a limited number of road cars. Being able to balance these out is really important, in my opinion, because then you get variety. And one thing that's crucial for good sports car racing is variety, and that's what we have here in the real world and in the virtual world too.
We really do, and I'm just looking up and down the order, and although we are 21 minutes into a 25-minute qualifying session, people are still setting personal best times and promoting themselves further and further up the order. So just to give you a quick rundown at the moment, provisional pole position is the number 388 Porsche for Luxim 24 Esports. That's Billy Fletcher with a 1 minute and 56.101. We're looking at him as he's having a slight little off-track excursion, just showing us how not to do it. Then we go to the fastest silver driver at the moment, although as Ian Roots addressed in the comments that classes aren't set until after round 2. He has set a 1 minute 56.153, so just about half a tenth slower than Billy Fletcher. Then Hendrik de Grave is in 3rd position at the moment with a 1 minute 56.404. Steve Norman for Vulcan Sim Racing is in 4th with a 1 minute 56.552, and it very much follows that trend all the way down the order. Only little intervals between drivers, and I'm not sure what happened there. I think that might have been Steve Norman stopping on the side of the circuit to end his session, and it looked like he was collected by one of the Flemish Sim Sports cars. I think that was possibly Kimber Haight. We'll have a look back at that. Not that I want to draw attention to it, but that really is quite interesting. So he's coming around that corner, not expecting to see a Ferrari. He jinks one way, tries to get out of the way in time, and doesn't quite get it done. Do you think that's maybe just Kim looking for every little tenth he can get throughout the session, and he might have just had a slight lapse of concentration, or he just clearly doesn't like that car?
Good question, Jack. I have to say, for the Ferrari there, I think in iRacing you can basically pull the car over to a stop and hold down the escape button, and that basically teleports you back to pit lane. Now the car has to be at a complete stop before it will do that, so perhaps maybe just didn't look in his mirror there. You couldn't really say he was pulled over. Probably, if you were to park anywhere on the circuit, that's probably the worst possible place he could have stopped. And the guy in the Ford had absolutely nowhere to go at all. So yes, that is something that would get you in quite a bit of trouble in certain series for doing that. So it's always wise to make sure you're well off the racing line at least before pulling over and getting your teleport back to pit lane.
It well and truly is, but we've still got people posting, not necessarily purple laps, but purple sectors. We've got this man here, Rob Thiessen for G-Drive Racing Exemia in one of the BMW M8. He set the fastest sector 4 overall, and you may be slightly confused because most circuits tend to be split into 3 sectors, obviously 1, 2 and 3, but on iRacing it splits them into sort of equal margins. So at the moment at Sebring there are 7 sectors, and the timing between them are rather different. I say that, but Billy Fletcher, he's just set a purple sector 2, and Steve Cooley, he's just set a purple sector 1, and you'll hear me referring to colours as well. Purple means fastest overall, and green will just be their personal best time, and you'll also see that on the overlay as well. So you can see Billy Fletcher, the fastest time overall, highlighted in purple, and everybody else obviously is showing their personal fastest lap overall as well. But we've only got about 30 seconds of the session to go, and someone that has just squeezed in another lap is this man here, Rob Thiessen. We've looked at him before, and he is currently provisional P2, but I'm guessing he's going to be pushing for every little hundredth of a second he can find, because he only needs half a tenth of a second to promote himself onto provisional pole position, and there's no better way to do it than on the very, very last lap. Looking a little further down the order, though, we've still got people out on circuit pushing hard. For example, we've got Giuseppe Naso for Ronin Sim Sport Academy in that beautiful Porsche. It just screams, and I know it's quite early on, but we normally look at the liveries. But how about sounding? What would you say that your favourite sounding car is out on circuit?
I have to agree with you. It's the Porsche all day long. I mean, it's one of the very, very few normally aspirated race cars in operation anymore. And in fact, in the real world, Porsche have just actually retired this version of the 911 RSR and replaced it. You guessed it, with a twin turbo edition. And I can tell you from first-hand experience, it doesn't sound anything like as good. However, we do still see this car used in the GTE AM category in the ELMS and at Le Mans too. So we've still got about a year or so left to hear this wonderful 911 RSR 4-litre flat 6 boxer engine shell. But one thing that's not typical Porsche about it is that this is the only 911 race car, it was the first 911 race car where the engine is actually technically mounted in the middle, which of course is very un-Porsche, normally known for having the engine in the rear of the car. And basically it's to do with that big diffuser that you see under the back taillights there, which is used for aerodynamics and downforce. And basically that was put in to basically because the regulations in the World Endurance Championship dictated that you needed that amount of aero to be competitive. So they had to move the gearbox from in front of the engine to behind the engine so they could fit that big diffuser in there. But short answer to question, definitely the Porsche sounds the best.
A little something that I didn't know, and I'm sure a couple of you in the comments didn't know as well. But as we expected, Rob Thiessen, he went out for a very last-ditch attempt of getting provisional pole position, and he went and did it. He posted a 1 minute 56.04, so only 700ths of a second quicker than Billy Fletcher, but that has put him in P1. Billy Fletcher has been demoted down into second position. Steve Cooley with a very late on promotion up the order. He is now third overall and second in the bronze category. We are still looking at Giuseppe for Ronin Sim Sport Academy in the number 4 Porsche, going round Sunset, the final corner, keeping it nice and balanced. We know it's a very, very bumpy circuit. You see the car going from left to right, and he's decided he's not going to complete this lap, and I think he is the last driver out on circuit. By the looks of it, he is as well. So that session went rather quickly, and bearing in mind we only saw the final 10 minutes of it, it had a bit of action. It had an incident. It had very last-minute moves up and down the order, and well, if this is a taste of what's to come in the race, we're going to be very busy tonight, Peter.
I think we will be, Jack, for sure. I mean, the Sebring International Circuit is notoriously bumpy, and that does play havoc if you've not got the car set up right. And if you just get a little bit offline, you can find yourself in a lot of trouble. As we see our Porsche safety car ready to line up and take us around on the pace lap.
Which does also mean it's time to rattle you through the grid. So on pole position with a last lap attempt from Rob Thiessen, let me try again. He posts a 1 minute 56.036 for G-Drive Exemia. So G-Drive looking for another good result here tonight. Billy Fletcher lines up on the first row alongside. Then Steve Cooley in third position, followed by Antoine Dupin. Then Hendrik de Grave and Steve Norman on row 3, followed by Kevin Murray, Camille Yagazoglu, Ronald Moons, Marius Janka, then John Tusting and John McConville. If we have a look just a little further down, see who else we can get. There we go. Dominic Forster, Stephen DeWolf, Mathieu Sophie, Kimber Haight, Louis Correa, Jonathan Stegerth, Thies Berger, James Hobden, Jesse Hendricks, Giuseppe Naso, who we were just looking at a little earlier on, Luke Wobbs for Fiercely Forward, followed by Chris Moretta for Meraki Racing. That's the first 12 rows. Going a little further back now onto the last couple of rows of the grid, we've got Jesse Hendricks. We just looked at Jesse Hendricks. There we go. Lee Woodburn, who's showing up as a privateer, but I've got a sneaking suspicion his team name hasn't loaded in, followed by Sven Calbert, Scotty Angelo, Paul Clist, Sebastian Herbera, Taylor Lane and Bram van Uitven. And I've got a feeling Seb Herbera was in the race last night, so whether he's just showing up as race direction or not, I'm not 100% sure, but we'll find out if he has lined up on the grid. No, it's just saying he's league director, so it looks like, yeah, we're not going to see Seb Herbera out on circuit, but we are going to see Taylor Lane for firstly forward, lining up on the very last row of the grid. And I think I think going off last night, this is probably going to be one of the most tense warm-up laps we've got to deal with all season.
Yes, it is, because none of these these are very, very sophisticated race cars, the GTE cars, but one thing they do not have is anti-lock braking systems. So getting heat into those brakes is very important on the pace lap. However, you don't want to land yourself in hot water by yanking on the brakes and the person behind you running into the back of you. That would not be the first time we'd seen that sort of thing happening on the pace lap. These cars do have traction control and, even better, programmable traction control, so you can switch around how much support or not you would like from your traction control system. Also, we should talk about fuel for this 90-minute race as well, Jack, because these cars will start with a maximum fuel cell of 60%, so they're only allowed to ever fill up with 60% of the car's capacity. Now, on full capacity, one of these cars can run for about an hour on a tank of fuel, but of course 60% is going to be somewhere around 40 minutes, so will require our drivers to stop twice during the race. But when you take those two stops, there's actually open to quite a lot of interpretation on strategy, I guess, isn't there?
Yeah, there really is, because you've got to stop it no matter what, but it's when you take those or both of those stops, and going an hour on tyres, it can be quite tricky on a bumpy and demanding circuit, and it does look quite hot. So what we'll do is we will get some weather up for you, so you can see what the drivers are dealing with as and when I find it. There we go. So it's popped up on the right hand side of your screen, so you can see the track temp is 23 degrees, which by sort of most regards, that's not quite a hot circuit, but if you're following a car very closely and you're really pushing yourself to the limit, you will overheat your tyres rather quickly. So it'll be interesting to see whether anybody goes up on the jacks during the pit stop and takes the tyres as well as the fuel they need to get to the end of the race. And I think you sort of hit the nail on the head there, Peter. It's going to be really interesting to see what strategies everybody's carrying into the race.
Yeah, it's a good point you mentioned about tyres as well, because making the tyres last an hour and a half might be possible with this track temperature. It might be, and it takes an extra 20 seconds or so to put them on. So I think if you are going to put them on, I would put them on in the first stop, run as long as you can, then put them on in the first stop, and try and get the best benefit out of those new tyres. But there are lots of ways to do it. Now, must make a note here, because we have a lot of Belgian runners in the field tonight. We're now about to go around a corner called Gendebien Bend, which is named after Olivier Gendebien, who was one of the best sports car drivers of all time, and won here at Sebring on many occasions in both a Ferrari and a Porsche, which of course we're going to see those two brands competing today.
And I think that will really be something we've got to look out for as well, because we were talking about it before the stream. It looks like at the moment that Sebring is a circuit for the BMW, the Porsche and the Ford, and the Ferrari seems to be in place a little further down the order, but that might just be to do with Sebring, and the car might better prefer a slightly tight and twistier circuit, which we'll have to keep an eye out for. But we're just about to go through Sunset for the first time, although it's just the warm-up lap, so it'll be good to see what sort of start our pole sitter can get. Billy Fletcher lining up alongside him. There he is, backing all the pack up is Rob Thiessen for G-Drive, seeing what he can do. Everybody's punching the throttle a little bit, eager to get going. You can see that Steve Cooley pretty much in under the rear wing of Rob Thiessen, but Rob Thiessen punches the throttle, and round one of the Simracers World GT Evo Series is underway here at Sebring. A great start from Rob Thiessen, driving his way down towards turn one. Steve Cooley on the inside of Billy Fletcher, looking to see whether he can get the move done. So Billy Fletcher now down into third position. Anton Dupin just behind is got the best seat in the house, watching this battle unfold in front of him. Looks like everybody's got through turn one pretty cleanly, nobody going backwards, everybody's still going. And I've got to say, that was quite a clean race, and all the cars, by the looks of it, have managed to work their way through turn one, Peter.
Yes, a very, very good discipline from all of our drivers. They're very, very impressive indeed. I have to say, the IMSA iRacing race that we saw here a few months ago, there was not the same level of courtesy there from those pro drivers. So well done to all our drivers today in this first round of the Simracersworld GT Evo Series. We're now coming round the very imaginatively named hairpin turn and heading up to the Fangio chicane. And good discipline so far from all of our drivers there, as we see the year one flip-flop car of Paul Joseph Clist. I have to say, that is the best sponsor you could have. Year one custom-made flip-flop. Look at that on screen. A very brightly coloured car as well.
You definitely can't miss it. But speaking of brightly coloured cars, the luminous orange G-Drive stripe, very prominent at the front of the field. Rob Thiessen disappearing into the distance, already built up a gap of about 1.5 seconds. He's setting purple sectors, I say that, but Anton Dupin has just set the fastest sector 5. So lots of chopping and changing still up the order, but Rob Thiessen seems to be the man to watch at the moment. 1.5 seconds, like I said, is the gap from him to Steve Cooley behind, who has still managed to fend off Billy Fletcher, looking to make amends from that very early lost position. The closest drivers on circuit, I think, at the moment are these two here. This is Kamil Yagizoglu chasing down Kevin Morey and Steve Norman. It doesn't look like it doesn't look like a big enough gap for anybody to make a move. But believe me, the draft assistants going down the start-finish straight will really make or break a move. So Kevin Morey for Galactics Motorsport in the Porsche, looking to the inside, filling the mirrors of Steve Norman ahead. So the Vulcan Sim Racing driver really going to have his hands full going on to lap 2 of the race. But that looks like that was Kevin Morey going very, very wide through turn 1. And Kamil Yagizoglu getting the position made, goes a bit deep into turn 2. But it looks like everybody's still keeping it nice and clean. No major incidents at all so far, which has got to be probably one of the cleanest race starts I've ever seen.
Yeah, certainly here on iRacing anyway, that's for sure. Normally there's a lot of drivers trying to win the race in the first corner, but we're not seeing that today. As one of the Porsches goes wide and onto the grass, outbrakes himself coming into Hairpin Bend. That was Hendrik de Graaf in the Flemish SimSports Porsche 911 RSR, but he's been able to filter back in without too much harm, so that's okay for him. Not ideal, but not a complete disaster. So this is really impressive, because we've got 90-minute race here. You've really got to take your time in this particular contest, because you just getting involved in an incident now just puts you so far down the order, but you just want to be able to keep in there and make sure you're there at the end of the race.
That's definitely the way to go, and like you say, a 90-minute race. It is still in theory a sprint race, but with both the pit stops it really could be won or lost on strategy as well. But Rob Thiessen seems to be, well, driving away with it at the moment. His gap hasn't extended out to the margin that we were quite expecting. 1.7 seconds up the road is Rob Thiessen from Steve Cooley, but Steve is going to have to be watching his mirrors here, because Billy Fletcher is trying to make up for that lost position very early on. We've had an incident for Luke Wobbs just previously. Let's have a look to see what happened there. So that's very sideways for the fiercely forward driver, gets a tap. I'm not sure we can go any further back. No, we can't. It looks like he's sideways going through the S's just before the back straight. Gets collected by another driver, and I think, he does the great thing there. Gets well and truly out of the way, compromising his own race just to make sure that he doesn't collect anybody else. With the fiercely forward driver at the very bottom of the field now, going around the final corner to tick off lap number 2, going on to lap number 3, and here is the leader still, Rob Thiessen. He's just disappearing into the distance. 2.2 seconds now is the gap between Rob Thiessen and Billy Fletcher. Well, I say that, Billy Fletcher has now regained the P2 spot over Steve Cooley, so we'll have to have a look back just to see what happened there. And it looks like that was Rob Thiessen running quite wide through there. There we go, up the inside. Pretty much exactly the same move that he fell foul of on lap 1. But Billy Fletcher now promoting himself up into second position. Steve Cooley's dropped down the order. I did think he ran wide. Nothing popped up on the event viewer, so it couldn't have been a major incident, but he's now lost out to Anton Dupin, the Flemish SimSports driver. And 5 minutes of the race already gone. It's full of action. We've still got 85 minutes of it.
Yeah, plenty of time for it all to go out there. Yeah, I mean, that was Cooley just outbraked himself into the hairpin bend. Very, very easy to do here at Sebring. It's a really deep braking zone from top gear down to bottom gear, basically. As we see two of the drivers at the back of the field having a good old battle here. That's Paul Clist in the very brightly coloured Ferrari with the equally brightly coloured Porsche 911 right beside him. Now, for Billy Fletcher, he sat on the pole position for most of the qualifying session and was just pipped by Thiessen at the very last moment. So Fletcher should have good pace in that 911 RSR. Now, just to mention on that Ford GT that we saw getting turned round on the previous lap, it's resplendent in the Wins livery, which was, of course, made famous last year at Le Mans. It was the first and only Ford GT to be entered at Le Mans in private hands under the Ben Keating Motorsport banner. And of course, Wins, they have a very, very bright colour scheme with pink, purple and orange. So you can't miss it out on track.
No, you really can't, but one thing you sort of want to miss out on track is Matthias Sufi is really working his way up through the order now. He's just got past Jonathan Stethgers and John Tusting within the space of about 10 seconds, so he's really carving his way up the order as the Simracersworld esports driver. Next target for him will be Jesse Hendricks in the Dynamics Racing Ferrari 488 GTE. Going up towards the hairpin, he's already sort of developed a little bubble around him at the moment. He's got 1.3 seconds behind and 2.8 seconds ahead. It looks like we might have had an incident a little further up through the order. It looks like Hendrik de Graaf went off the circuit. We saw him dropping down the order, going into the hairpin once again. He's outbraked himself, got on the grass, couldn't keep the steering lock on. Does a great job of not coming back onto the racing line. It looked like he probably squeezed one of the other drivers just to let him know that he's coming back onto the circuit. But he rejoins the circuit just behind his teammate of Kimber Haight in the Flemish Simsports 4GT. And I've got to say, that Flemish Simsports car, I've said it from day one, ever since they did the rework on that livery, it is one of the best liveries, I think, on iRacing.
It's very cool. Yeah, very cool indeed. Nice dark colour scheme. And of course, that Ford GT is just a wonderful looking car. And the thing I love about it so much is that it really emulates the Ford GT, the original Ford GT from the 1960s, which had a lot of success here at Sebring. Won the Sebring 12 Hour 3 times in its original guise. But actually didn't win the in-class in the Sebring 12 Hours in its 4 years of service in either IMSA or the World Endurance Championship, which is quite unusual.
Well, it doesn't look like he's struggling to pilot that Ford around here at all. Currently in 12th position, gained 4 positions from where he started, and he is already on the tail of Kevin Murray for Galactics Motorsport. We were watching from the nose of Kimber Haight, just seeing how close he got on the brakes, and it does look like the Ford is the car to have on the brakes. There's a puff of tyre smoke a little further up the order. That's someone dropping down. I think that could possibly be Kamil Yagizoglu, who locked a brake. But look how close everybody is at the moment. Kamil Yagizoglu looking to get around the outside of John McConville. I don't think he's going to get the move done. Going into the hairpin, still side by side. It's last of the late breakers. There's an incident further back. That's John McConville getting spun around by, I think, Kevin Murray, and Jesse Hendricks inadvertently became a cropper of that incident as well. I think that was Jonathan Steggers as well that got caught up. No, this is an incident a little further back as well, so everybody trying to work their way around the order. That's another Flemish Simsports car going very deep into the hairpin, and it seemed like that it seems like the hairpin is really the place to watch at the moment, because nobody can get it right.
It is a hot spot. As I say, you're braking from top gear. You're braking ever so slightly downhill. You've got quite a bit of straight before that, heading around Gurney Bend, which is completely flat out. There's a good opportunity for the car behind you to slipstream. So yeah, it very much is a hot spot for action and for overtaking. Now here's one for you, Jack. What do our boss Ian Roots and Roger Penske have in common?
I don't know. Go on.
So Roger Penske, of course, one of the biggest names in motorsport, owner of many different teams in NASCAR, V8 Supercar and IndyCar, but of course recently bought the IndyCar Series and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So not only does he own a team in the IndyCar Series, he owns the series as well. And of course, you could say the same about our boss Ian Roots, because of course he owns this series, and we have a couple of Simracersworld cars in the field today.
I've got to say, I didn't notice that, but yeah, he's basically Mr. Penske, isn't he? We've had an incident.
He is the Roger Penske of British sim racing.
We'll have to make sure we change his nickname in the Discord. That's Steve Cooley going very deep into turn 1, locked the brake, trying to desperately get it slowed down. You saw a puff of smoke from the outside front tyre having to go rattling across the grass. You could just see how bumpy it is. It's a good job he didn't light up the rear tyres. Joins the circuit at probably one of the busiest points, but manages to keep it out of everybody's way by the looks of it. We'll go back live with him just to see how he's getting on. and see how he's fending off the attentions of the Simracersworld Esports Ferrari just behind. 10 minutes of the race just gone. The leader, Rob Thiessen, still disappearing into the distance, but it looks like it's now become a three-way battle for the lead after losing Steve Cooley. Billy Fletcher has been left on his own towards the top end of the order. He's now surrounded by silver drivers. It's Anton Dupin behind in the Flemish Sim Sports 4 GT, who will be watching on the cars ahead. Mr. Rob Thiessen and Billy Fletcher hopefully going to be battling nice and closely over the coming laps, and Anton Dupin will be licking his lips, hoping that they make a mistake or slow each other down just enough to see whether he can inherit pole position. But Rob Thiessen really going to have his hands full, because if we look back now, you can just see how close that Lux Sim 24 Esports car is. And I'm not sure whether Billy Fletcher has found an extra bit of pace, but he is really closed up, hasn't he, Peter?
Yeah, Fletcher's, I had a feeling that might have been the case. Fletcher's really closed up, and look at the times. I wonder more actually that Thiessen's made a mistake. A 2:02.4 on the last lap and a 2-minute flat 0.5 for Fletcher, but a 1:57 for Dupin. So I wonder if the two of these drivers maybe got together at some point, perhaps. But it's all kind of concertinaed back together. So I tell you what, if this is a great example of why balance of performance is such a good method for sports car racing, where each car is balanced out as best as possible. As we see, Fletcher goes by on the outside and gets the move done, and Thiessen doesn't make much of a protest and just thinks, you know what, you can do the hard work for a while. I've led for 12 minutes. You can carry on. So this will be interesting to see if Fletcher can escape here, and if he's able to put a couple of qualifying laps in, well, he might be able to make a little bit of an advantage. And of course, Dupin in the Ford GT is not far behind at all. So we'll change for the lead after nearly 13 minutes of this race. Billy Fletcher, 388 in the Lux Sim 24 Esport car. So yeah, coming back to the difference in cars, we've got the Porsche at the front, which is a mid to rear engined 4-litre naturally aspirated. Then we've got the BMW, which is a front engined twin turbo V8. And then we've got the Ford, which is a mid engined twin turbo V6. Three completely different cars, completely different manufacturers, absolutely inseparable on the timesheet.
I think that really does pay its worth in terms of balance and performance. It just shows that although these cars look drastically different and they've got very different drivetrains and everything on top of that, they just can't battle even closer. But that's Kimber Haight over-rotating the car, going onto the back straight. It looks like he clipped the grass using all the curb and a little bit too much. Kept it out the wall, I think. We'll have a look back just to see what happened once again. So going round the penultimate corner, clipped the grass, I think, and just about kept it out the wall. Reversed back as much as he was comfortable with, piled the lock on and got back going again. We'll go back live with him just to see how he's getting on. Going around the final corner, it looks like he's really struggling with the tail end of that forward, because he had a bit of a slide going on there, but he's now fallen into the grasp of Chris Moretta for Meraki Racing. And that Meraki Racing livery as well, it's going to be one of the prettiest battles I've ever seen on circuit. So you've got the beautiful Flemish Sim Sports car piloted by Kimber Haight, and then you've got something that can challenge it, that new Meraki Racing car. And I think the change from the luminous yellow to blue just to the shades of blue and silver, it just really makes the car look that much quicker.
Yeah, it's much nicer. I would agree with you there, Jack. Of course, there's not many ways to make a Ferrari look bad, but that looks fantastic on that one there. Just to mention on the Ferrari, it's personally a car I kind of struggle with personally driving on iRacing, but I had the privilege a couple of weeks ago of speaking to Rachel Fry on my podcast, and she drives the 488 GTE car at Le Mans with her Iron Dames teammates, and she said it's a fantastic endurance car in the real world. It's bulletproof and really manageable over a race. So that's why she's a professional racing driver and I commentate.
I don't think I could do much better if I'm honest, mate. I struggle to keep the car pointing the right way for, at least a lap. But we're now looking at Rob Thiessen, who has dropped even further into the grasp of Anton Dupin, and you can really see just to the scale of how much slower, well, not how much slower, but how much quicker, more or less, Billy Fletcher is. He's been let out of the gates and he's disappearing into the distance. We'll have a look as soon as he crosses the line at what lap he has set, so he crosses the line now. The lap he's just done was a 1 minute 57.778, and Rob Thiessen and Anton Dupin, both the cars behind, still in the 1 minute 58. So Billy Fletcher, like you said, Peter, putting in those qualifying lap times and slowly starting to increase the gap he has. 1 second ahead is Billy Fletcher from Rob Thiessen, so still just about within draft range, but if he keeps going the way he's going, that will very, very quickly dissipate. Going down the order, we're now looking at Steven de Wolf, going in towards turn 1, seeing whether he can find a way past the Renault Simsport Academy Porsche of Giuseppe Nazzo side by side. You've got to be very brave to get the move done there, but he's compromised himself, and so Taylor Lane, fiercely forward in another Porsche 911 RSR, is looking around the outside once again. Got to be very brave to get the move done there, and they're still side by side just about, and Taylor Lane pulls out of the move and looks to get the cutback going onto the second straight. He's going to be in the draft going up towards the hairpin, heading very, very close, and the hairpin seems to be one of the most rewarding but one of the most difficult corners to get right.
Yeah, and I think it's your best overtaking opportunity here on the Sebring circuit. Sometimes you can make a move stick at sunset, but you require the person in front of you to make a small mistake and run wide, and it can cause incidents there too. But yeah, certainly your most straightforward overtaking opportunity is at the hairpin bend. It's nice to see that fiercely forward Porsche making its way through. Of course, we saw one of the other fiercely forward cars facing fiercely backwards earlier on in the race.
Yeah, that's not something we like to see for Luke Wubbs, but speaking of Luke Wubbs, he has now got back up to where he started. He's now in 23rd overall, chasing down Bram van Outven for Dynamics Racing. 3 seconds up the road, and it looks like a little further down the order, it seems to be quite open, because we've got James Hobden 6 seconds in front of Bram, and then 3 seconds in front of James. We've got Dominic Forster, and well, we're 3 wide. I wasn't quite expecting this. That's Taylor Lane now, looking to the inside of Steven de Wolf, and the inside of Steven de Wolf and the outside of Giuseppe Nazzo. That looks like that's a very big hit between the two. That's Steven de Wolf collecting Taylor Lane. We'll have a look back, so I wasn't quite looking at the time. I was looking at my timing screen. It looked like Taylor Lane went into the tail end of Steven de Wolf. Sideways into the wall goes Taylor Lane. Does he get it back out of the wall? Well, he does indeed. Doesn't get wedged underneath the tyre barriers, but not something we like to see. I was hoping that battle would evolve over the rest of the race. We've had an incident for Steve Cooley once again. Tell us what you see, Peter.
So let's have a look. See Steve Cooley here in the silver Ford GT, and oh, dearie me, just gets a little bit loose coming into the back straight there and gets collected by one of the Ferraris. He has had a very eventful start from a very strong grid position for Steve Cooley in that Ford. So he might well, now we must make our viewers aware that our drivers have one iRacing fast repair at their disposal at any point in the race. They can only use it once, but they have it at their disposal. So they can either go to pit lane under their own power, and they will get an instant repair back to 100%, or if they're in big trouble, they can take what's called the tow. They can take an electronic tow, which takes usually about 1.5 to 2 minutes to get back to pit lane and then take that instant repair. So Steve Cooley, he has had a few bits of contact with a few cars so far, so he might well want to maybe take his first stop early, and he could do that and still get home. He could still do his 2 stops then and get home. He wouldn't need to take a 3rd stop. So if I were him, I would perhaps maybe get out of sequence, get that car back to normal, and then start turning laps out on his own.
And once again, it's going to come back to what we said earlier. It's all about strategy and what he does, because whether he goes into the pit this time or he decides to stay out on circuit and just sort of manage the damage that he's already got. But like you say, if he pits now, he will be able to stretch that tank and take another pit stop, and that should just about get him towards the end of the race, going through the final corner. We'll keep an eye on him, see what he can do. But what he will be doing, that's quite a shallow line. He's decided not to go into the pits this time by. We've had an incident for Louis Correa, who has already been into the pits once this time, or once in this race. Oh, he's clipped the grass, over-rotated the car on the brakes. And does he keep it out of the wall? He's just about, I think he's leaving it very last minute to grab the brakes. Finds the gear he wants and gets back going again. So a rotten race so far for Louis Correa. Really dropped down the order, lost 12 positions from where he started, and he's already been into the pits once already this race. Now turning in lap, now turning in position 29th. We've still got battles in the mid-pack. It looks like Giuseppe Nazzo has managed to work his way past Dominic Forster. We'll keep an eye on this battle because they're very much nose to tail going into the midway part of the circuit. Going into the braking zone, we know the Porsche isn't massively strong on the brakes, but it looks like it's just strong enough at the moment. And once again, you can just see the acceleration of that Porsche coming out of the corners, and I think that is really where the Porsche shines at the moment. But the BMW has the legs on the straight, and the Ferrari just seems to float around in the middle. It's quite good during the corners, but coming out of the corners, it really is no match for that Porsche.
Yeah, we saw a lot of the very top teams in the iRacing Le Mans 24 Hours opting for the Ferrari because it's got very good top end. Its absolute outright speed is very, very good, which of course at Le Mans is vitally important. And fittingly, we're just going around Le Mans corner here at Sebring as well. So we'll see if the Ferrari can get in the draft of the 911 RSR, and of course with that enormous rear wing, you can sort of fit in the draft quite well behind it. But of course, as we head down here into Sunset Corner, we saw that incident there. It's very, very easy to get into the back of the car in front as the Ferrari takes the tighter line, and the Porsche of Giuseppe Nazzo takes the wider line. And look, they've come out at about the same place, so there's lots of different lines you can take in that Sunset Corner. While we were talking about the BMW there, actually the BMW, it's quite a strange sounding car. That Ferrari, the Makita Racing, the Meraki Racing Ferrari of Chris Moretta. What a save that was, Jack.
I don't know how he kept that out of the wall. The car just seemed to snap. That's Jonathan Steggers for Flemish Sim Sports. Speaking of BMWs, went very, very sideways into turn 2. Once again, another great save from one of our drivers out on circuit. I don't know how he kept that out of the wall either. He was going at a rapid rate of knots into turn 2. Over-rotated the car, but managed to get it slowed down before the grass, let alone the wall. Carries on without any further incidents, but let's just have a look back at that Chris Moretta incident. Going through turn 1, just clips the grass, snaps one way, snaps the other, locks all the brakes, and does a great job of keeping that out of the wall. I'm not sure how he did that. I mean, you can also see what happened to that was Jonathan ahead, and I don't know how he kept that out of the wall either. So once again, two great saves from two of our drivers out on circuit. Here is Jonathan now, continuing to turn laps. And he's just caught onto the tail end of a battle we were looking at earlier between Dominic Forster and Giuseppe Nazzo. Anton Dupin has managed to work his way past Billy Fletcher. We'll have a look in a second just to see how he did it. Anton Dupin sliding the car around Sunset, but he's left himself vulnerable on the exit. We'll keep an eye, because Billy Fletcher will be in the draft going up towards turn 1. And knowing Billy, he's not going to take prisoners. There you go, looking to the inside, filling his mirrors, late on the brakes up the inside, and that seems to be the way to do it at the moment. Billy Fletcher up the inside, but it looks like Anton Dupin is going to go for the cutback. Can't quite get the move done, but let's look back just to see what happened between these two that initiated the battle. That's Billy Fletcher running very, very wide, going through what I think is turn 13. And he wasn't planning on sticking behind the rear wing of that Flemish Sim Sports car for very long, and he's already got back out in front. But all that hard work he put in at the start of the race has come and done, because 2.2 seconds up the road is our leader, Rob Thiessen.
Yep, Rob Thiessen, the Dutchman, the Flying Dutchman right now, back out in front. So that mistake, very, very costly from Fletcher, just coming out of Tower Turn there onto the very short Flying Fortress straight, because actually the Sebring International Raceway used to be an old airbase where they had a fleet of Flying Fortress aircraft.
Well, I've got to say, I didn't know that, but I knew it was an airbase, but I didn't know that it held a fleet of Flying Fortresses, and they're not exactly small aircraft. And I've got to say, I still don't think they're anything close to how big this BMW M8 is, because it really is quite the monster. Can just see how balanced that car looks as well. For quite a big car, it just seems to be very responsive and do everything Rob wants to do with it. Looking down the order, Steve Cooley for Running Sim Sport Academy, chasing down the BMW of Stephen de Wolf ahead, but he went slightly deep there, still nose to tail. And I've got to say, the Fords, every time we look at one, they seem to be going rather sideways, but they collect at the moment quite quickly. Do you think that could be something just generally within the Ford itself? It's quite a slidey car, or is that maybe just a way to drive it? Everybody's pushing very hard. Speaking of going sideways, that's Steve Cooley going very, very sideways out of a corner that caught Billy Fletcher out on the lap prior.
Yeah, the Ford is obviously it's got incredible aerodynamics. You can see, it was made with absolutely zero compromise as a race car. It was built as a race car in a skunk works in Dearborn, Michigan, where only a very small number of Ford staff actually knew that the project was going on. And they basically were given a complete blank sheet of paper to design their ultimate race car for the GT class at Le Mans. And then the kind of small task of creating a road car to sell to basically in order to qualify or be homologated for racing, they have to sell a certain number. As Steve Cooley goes into pit lane, very wise actually for him to come into pit lane. He's very much out of position there. But yes, the Ford, they then had to figure out how to build and sell a certain number of examples of road car, and of course they sold the Ford GT road car at £420,000 a piece, and actually got to choose out of the people who applied who they would sell the car to. What a lovely position to be in. And now these cars are now coming up for private sale for north of $1 million. So it's if you got your hands on one of those, you've made a tidy profit.
You really have. Giuseppe Nazzo now looking to defend as hard as he can from Dominic Forster in the Ferrari 488 GT, but he left himself vulnerable to the recovering Jonathan Steggers in the Flemish Sim Sports BMW. This is now a four-way battle, quickly developing into a five-way battle for what is P15 overall. Giuseppe at the front of it, but I think Giuseppe has defended as hard as he can, and that might have left him in quite a tidy little position here, because Dominic Forster, we saw him compromise his line and fall into the grasp of Jonathan Steggers behind, and you can see that gap is slightly building between the two, and you can see the acceleration of the Porsche out of the corner, but I think Jonathan Hobden just behind is reading this battle as best he can, and you can see the gap fluctuating in between the two. Giuseppe Nazzo now falling under pressure from Dominic Forster once again, but Jonathan Steggers really closed up on the brakes, and you can now see how far back the Abruzzi Apparel driver of James Hobden has dropped back to. That's Dominic Forster running very, very wide coming out of Le Mans corner. He's lost out to Jonathan Steggers, and I think he's just about going to lose out to James Hobden as well. He has indeed. So Dominic Forster losing 2 positions in the space of 1 corner going into sunset. He can't do much about it, and there is what we were talking about earlier, Peter, just the amount of different lines you can take through there, but they all lead to the same conclusion if you're coming out of the corner pretty much exactly where you went into it.
You do, yes, and of course the car that you're driving will have a big impact on how you, and also your personal driving style, how you take that corner. Now, Billy Fletcher, do you think he's maybe a little bit angry about making that mistake? Because in the last lap, he set his fastest lap of the race so far, taking nearly 0.4 of a second out of Tyson in the BMW as they head into Tower Bend. A really, really tricky corner, but very satisfying to get right. I have to say I was lucky to go to the Rolex 24 Hour at Daytona this year, and which BMW won for the 2nd year in a row. With their BMW M8, they actually had Chaz Mostert, the Australian V8 supercar driver, in the car for that, and it is extraordinary how quiet the car is. It almost sounds like an electric car compared to some of the other cars on the circuit. But it's actually a twin-turbo V8, 2 4-cylinder engines glued together, basically. And again, a bit like the Ford, it's probably the only thing it has in common with the Ford. The race car was released before the road car equivalent was. There's actually a really good documentary on the M8 on Amazon Prime right now as well, so check that out. It's in German, but you can have it with English.
I'm sure everybody, as soon as they finish watching the Simracersworld GT Evo Series Round 1 at Sebring, will go and have a look at that. Porsche Sport chat saying, could take Peter MacKay onto their pub quiz team. Well, I've got to say I would if it was motorsport related, because, well, if we got a question wrong, they're clearly lying, aren't they? Because at the moment Peter seems to know everything that there is to know. We're now looking at Giuseppe Nazzo defending from Jonathan Steggers, going up the inside at sunset. You don't really want to go too wide through there. Jonathan Riley pulls out the move very, very close between the two. I don't think there was contact there. Giuseppe Nazzo taking the wide line in and then cutting back to get the preferred line on pit entry, but it looks like Jonathan Steggers got away with that lightly. I don't think there's much damage on the front of that BMW, but you can now just see how close James Hobden is in the Abruzzi Apparel Ferrari. So this battle once again has been reignited between these three. James Hobden chasing down Jonathan there we go. James Hobden chasing down Jonathan Steggers. There's too many J's throughout the order. We've now got Dominic Forster also trying to get in on this battle, and Taylor Lane, you heard the Porsche screen by there, that's Taylor Lane for fiercely forward, only 1.5 seconds behind. So he will be able to see the battle evolving in front of him. You can see the cars as well, chopping and changing a little further up the order. So Jonathan Steggers has pretty much spent all his time up and down through this little battle. Looks like James Hobden is going all the way around the outside. Somewhere where you've got to be quite brave to get the move done. It's going to come out to last of the late breakers. The BMW is the heavier car, and it doesn't look like it's got the braking performance of the Ferrari. Still side by side between the two. Great to see that they can race this close without having any contact at all, not even a slight bit of door-to-door contact. But look how close Taylor Lane is getting onto the tail end of this battle, going in towards Tower Bend. James Hobden still hot on the heels of Jonathan Steggers, but Dominic Forster seems to get the best run out of the two, and there's Taylor Lane now really close and hot on the heels of this battle. So this trio was very quickly turned into a quartet. So they lost Giuseppe Nazzo, and Taylor Lane has decided to take the place, and he is in 17th position, and if he does everything right, he'll promote himself all the way up into 14th.
We've got our leaders in pit lane, Jack. We've got Fletcher going into pit lane, and also Tyson as well. In fact, Fletcher perhaps not. It was coming up on the timing screen that he had, but as you can see, that is not pit lane, and that is not the pit lane speed limit. So that's interesting. Billy Fletcher deciding to run a little bit longer. So we've only had 32 minutes so far. So probably another 8 to 10 minutes of fuel left in that car. And we see Dupin not far behind there, maybe about 2 or 3 seconds or so. So interesting that Tyson is the first to jump and go into pit lane. So let's see when Fletcher is going to decide to go into pit lane. If I were him, I mean, to me it looks like he has the ultimate pace of these three drivers. He's been the one setting the fastest laps consistently. So, it's interesting. What would you do, Jack, if you were the crew chief?
I would probably say, like, yeah, stay out and do the reverse strategy of the leader, just to see what can come of it, because Rob Thiessen has come out into, well, a bit of fresh air, and that might not be something he's wanting at the moment. He's got a 2-second gap to the Meraki Racing driver of Chris Moretta ahead, so he won't have any draft assistance to keep up with him. Billy Fletcher still going strong, going around the final corner. It'll be good to see what he can do, whether he's going into the pits this time by taking quite the wide line in, so whether he's going to cut back in on himself. It looks like he's going to go into the pits this time by hard on the brakes, grabs the pit limiter and dives into the pit lane. Anton Dupin joins him as well. Now looking at Marius Janka for Manatee Racing. I think he's also going to dive into the pits this time by, so is Kamil Yagazoglu. John Tusting now very much in a world of his own with no cars to be seen. The Quantum Racing livery, also one that I've got to say I really do like the look of on that Porsche. Sounds like that's spluttering for fuel, so it's got to come into the pits this time. Chris Moretta, I'm guessing he's going to join him as well, and you can see Rob Thiessen at the bottom of the pictures. So we'll keep an eye on Rob just to see what he can do, whether he crosses the line and manages to keep the lead. However, Billy Fletcher is already on pit exit, so this is going to be very close between the two. There's Rob Thiessen. You can see Billy Fletcher a little further up the road. Billy Fletcher has punched the throttle, the flat six engine screaming, and that's Rob Thiessen re-inheriting the lead. But look how close these two are now. That has very much closed up. Billy Fletcher hot on the heels of our leader, and it looks like the move is going to be on over the next coming laps.
That's interesting. I wonder if the fuel is maybe not running quite as long as we perhaps thought, Jack. So it could be that actually that effectively reduces the options available to our drivers, because they've kind of almost got to split this race into 3, so 2 stops in the middle of the race. So that kind of reduces the options available, unless these two drivers have short filled, but I doubt that will be the case. Now for Billy Fletcher, this isn't ideal, because he's the driver with probably the ultimate pace on his own, but if he's got to battle with Tyson, that's not what he really needs. He needs clean air to be able to deploy that pace. If you're Tyson, he's probably quite happy just slowing the pace ever so slightly, or at least running it at his pace and slowing Fletcher down. So it's game on here at Sebring. Brilliant stuff.
It really is, and while this little battle is roaring away, Anton Dupin, yes, he has lost a bit of time during the pit stops, but the Flemish Sim Sports driver only 3 seconds behind them, so any sort of major incident up ahead will leave him in a very tidy position because he's 14 seconds ahead of the Manatee Racing BMW, the number 88 car piloted by Marius Janka. There we go. Kamil Yagizoglu for Dynamics Racing in 5th position. That's how close those two are, and are pairing a little further down the order. That's Louis Correa working his way back up. He is now in 20th position. After we last looked at him, he was in 29th. So he's doing a great job, and he's on the tail end of Jonathan Steggers, still led by Taylor Lane. And Taylor Lane now in 18th position. A little earlier on, he had his eyes up on 14th, but Giuseppe Nazzo just a little further up the road. And everybody's spread out to quite a comfortable margin. Everybody's got a bit of fresh air between them. The closest cars on circuit, however, are very much towards the top end of the order. That's Ronald Moons for Race Masters Esports, slowly starting to come under pressure of his fellow Porsche driver, Hendrik de Grave. And once again, that beautiful Flemish Sim Sports livery. Going through turn 1, you can just see how bumpy it is, but the Porsche deals with the bumps very, very nicely going in towards turn 2. And it really, I think that camera really just shows off how quick these cars can go into the corners, and this camera angle as well, it just shows the real turning and cornering performance that these cars have.
Yes, they do. They've got, I mean, once you get the hang of the brakes, you get great control of the braking. You can trail brake slightly if you wish to. And like you say, brilliant aerodynamics. They turn in beautifully, but also with the traction control systems, you can actually take pretty big liberties on the throttle when you come out the corners. You can sometimes, when driving these cars, you open the throttle up and you think, oh, round we go, and the traction control works out and off you go again, which is lovely. I have to say, speaking of our sponsor, Porsche Sport, I was very lucky to join as 5th man in their team at Le Mans, and we did it in the 911 RSR, of course, and yeah, a really, really good car to run long stints in. Very, very well set up and kind of on rails, really, to be honest. And this car in the real world has had incredible success here at the Sebring International Raceway at the famous 12-hour race. In fact, they've won it the last 2 years in the the GTLM class in IMSA, with Englishman Nick Tandy has won it the last 2 years, the man from Luton.
Yeah, he really does know what he's doing, and you speak to any sort of major motorsport fan and you even utter the name of Nick Tandy and it will immediately spring to mind. But speaking of our sponsors, thank you for bringing that up, Peter. Obviously we've got Porsche Sport, one of the title sponsors of the series. They're joined by Strasser, Abruzzi and Dynamic Simulator, so a massive thank you and shout out to those guys, because this really wouldn't be possible without you. But back to the action, Rob Thiessen still just about leading the way. Billy Fletcher 6/10 behind, so whether Billy has just eased off that little bit, maybe saving his tyres and saving that extra little bit of fuel in the draft, and decided that the move isn't necessarily on for the win overall this early on in the race, because obviously everybody's still got to go in for another pit stop as well, and the amount of time Billy gained in the previous pit stop, if in theory he gains exactly the same, he'll probably end up in front, Peter.
Yeah, I think for Billy, he'll know the kind of lap time that he's comfortable with, and he'll know the lap time that's too fast or too slow, basically. So if he's seeing on his Delta coming up on the dashboard on his 911 RSR, if it's coming up with a lap time that he's happy with, he's probably sensible to sit behind Tyson for this stint and save fuel and save tyres. In fact, there was I don't know if you've seen it, Jack, an excellent documentary on YouTube called Endurance, which was commissioned by Porsche themselves. And Lawrence Vantor, one of the Porsche factory drivers, talks a lot about, in endurance racing, you've got a choice. If you're following somebody, you can either really go for it and try and actually pass them on track, or you can sit behind them and save fuel and save tyres and jump them in the pit. So you have both of those options open to you. So Billy Fletcher, he has that option, because when you're the following car, you can save tyres much easier, and also fuel, because you're getting the draft effect from the car in front.
He really does have those options open to him, but we did just catch Taylor Lane off the circuit, and we've had an incident for Jonathan Steggers as well. So whether these incidents are related, it does look like they are. Jonathan Steggers once again being caught out on the brakes. Just you saw how quickly that BMW snapped through 180 degrees, and Taylor Lane, I think he just ran wide as well. We'll be able to look back at that incident as well, going in towards the hairpin, where we've seen many an incident before. Over-rotated the car just about through 90 degrees. Does the sensible thing. Great to see that he's grabbed reverse, making sure he's not just going to go straight onto the racing line. Great driving from Taylor. So the fiercely forward driver going for a little bit of rallycross. at the midway point of the race. But now you can see through incidents, these guys have developed into quite a nice little battle. We've got Jonathan Steggers defending from Taylor Lane, going down the back straight in towards the final corner, and you can just see the grunt of the BMW just about keeping Jonathan ahead to the Flemish Sim Sports driver, just about, there you go, keeping ahead of the firstly forward driver in the Porsche 911 RSR around the final corner, and maybe the acceleration of the Porsche will really show going up towards turn 1. He will have draft assistance, will Taylor Lane. Well and truly tucked under the rear wing, dives to the inside, filling his mirrors, late on the brakes. We've seen it work for Billy Fletcher, and it definitely works for Taylor Lane. Great driving from Taylor, throws it up the inside, gets the move done, and Jonathan Steggers, well, he really couldn't do much about that, but now look how big the gap is between those two, 6, 7, almost 8 tenths now. So Taylor Lane making the move stick and a bit more. The lead battle, however, has really opened up. Rob Thiessen now 1.2 seconds ahead of Billy Fletcher.
Ah, now that is interesting. I wonder, perhaps Fletcher maybe on the fuel save. Of course, the 911 RSR has a really, I think, the best dashboard in the class, where it gives really helpful information. It gives you a amount of fuel used per lap, and also you can play about with the traction control. You'll see it there, all the buttons and things that it replicates from the real world 911 RSR, but it tells you how much fuel you're using per lap, how much fuel you've got left, and also the traction control and fuel settings. So you can change the throttle map to basically save more fuel. It only makes a minuscule difference, but that's motorsport, you know, so it can make a bit of difference as we're now starting to come across lap traffic. As we see, we've got a blinking car. I don't know if you're getting that on your feed as well, Jack.
As well, yeah.
One of the Ferraris there. I always say that blinking cars, it's now we must make our viewers aware that that is to do with the internet connection usually, and of course the driver of that Ferrari, Scotty Angelo, he will not know that that's happening. So I always say it's a bit like people who snore. They have no idea they're doing it, but the people around them will be incredibly annoyed by it.
I've got to say that is probably one of the most perfect analogies for people blinking, and I've never heard it, but I 100% see what you mean. But Rob Thiessen dealing with that traffic very well. Looks like we've had an incident, possibly even connected between the two. It's Jonathan Steggers and John McConville have both had an incident. Once again, that's a very sideways moment for Jonathan Steggers into the wall. Does he get collected by anybody else? It doesn't look like he does. Great job getting slowed down was the BMW M8 just behind, but Jonathan Steggers, a big hit into the wall, so he will have to take his fast repair on the next rotation into the pit lane. Let's have a look to see what John McConville fell off. Oh, it was this incident. So very late on the brakes. I wouldn't call it a crash. I guess he just dived on the brakes that hard that the SDK software thought he'd done such a good job of slowing down that we needed to have a look at it. So John McConville, great avoidance driving, and he is now in 22nd position overall. Not the greatest race from John so far after starting in 12th position, now all the way down in 22nd. But someone we've looked at a lot throughout the stream is just about 8 seconds up the road. It's this man here, Taylor Lane, very slowly catching up to the tail end of Bram van Uitven in the Dynamics racing car, who is just about within reach of James Hobden in the Abruzzi Apparel Ferrari 488 GTE. And we've got to that point in the race where everybody's opened up to quite the margin. The closest cars on circuit, however, are just a little bit up the road. That's Giuseppe Naso and Dominic Forster. These two have been glued together throughout the race, and I'm not sure this is going to be something new between the two. They're just going to be nose to tail until the very end.
Yeah, sometimes you see that in endurance racing where it really, you see cars glued together. I mean, we saw it this year at the Rolex 24 at Daytona in the real world. The two factory Porsche 911 RSRs and the BMW M8, which eventually went on to win the race. I mean, given that it's a 24-hour race, those three cars, the only time they weren't apart, they weren't together, was when they were in pit lane. It was absolutely amazing to watch, just putting pressure on one another all the way through the 24-hour race. And that's really what we've got now in global sports car racing. No matter what the length of the race, it's just one big sprint, which just makes it so entertaining to watch. And you know what, so far today, out of the 45 minutes, we're now at half distance. We're getting a real treat of driving here as well. Now, Dupin, I noticed Dupin in the P3 right now, in the Flemish Sim Sport. Of course, we mentioned how nice looking that Flemish Sim Sport livery is. Do you know another Belgian in a very cool livery in a Ford who did quite well here at Sebring?
I'm not sure. Go on, enlighten me.
Jackie X. So Jackie X actually won the Sebring 12-hour in the Gulf Ford GT40 back in 1969. So there must be something about Belgians in good-looking Fords.
It must be. I am very sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I do think that was on my end. I disconnected from the session very, very briefly. So apologies about that, but we are back, and it looks like my connection is once again stabilized. So once again, apologies for any stuttering or buffering throughout. But it looks like, yes, we are back and running as usual. But the battle hasn't stopped between these guys. James Hobden still hot on the heels of Giuseppe Nazzo, but these two have been battling so much. They've almost been caught up by Bram van Uitven, who is inadvertently dragging Taylor Lane along with him. So Taylor Lane once again making the most of other people's battles, now in 21st. So a good little recovery drive from Taylor after a couple of small incidents throughout the race. But still leading that train is Giuseppe Nazzo, and I've got a feeling this will not be the last time we look at him, because he really can't shake off the attentions of James Hobden in the Ferrari behind.
Nope, and he's going to have these two Porsches for company as well, as Taylor Lane looks up the inside and tell you what, Taylor Lane is really, really good at Sunset. We saw him make a good move, well, set up a good move there a couple of laps ago, where he used the off-corner drive of the Porsche 911 RSR to full effect, and then lined it up all the way down the straight and made the move work at turn 1 as we're going around here now. So Taylor Lane good at that crucial Sunset bend. You can gain and lose a lot of time in that corner, probably more than any other corner on the circuit. You're braking while turning, which is always nasty. As we see Giuseppe Nazzo, he's given up a spot, has he? No, he's able to defend from Hobden in the Ferrari. But look at this, we've got a four car pack now.
Yeah, so Taylor Lane really making the most of this battle, almost 3 wide. I've got to say, I'm very sorry, ladies and gentlemen, because I did have a slight blink once again as well. But James Hobden looking like he's going to make the move all the way around the outside. He's got to go the very long way round, but he looks like he gets the acceleration out of the corner. He's dragging Taylor Lane with him once again. So Giuseppe Nazzo really got to keep an eye on his mirrors. Almost 3 wide again. Taylor really isn't afraid of making a 3 wide move, and wow, look at that up the inside, late braking. Does he get both moves done? He gets up the inside of James Hobden. He's looking like he's going to get past Giuseppe Nazzo, still side by side, just about half a car length between them up the inside. Taylor Lane, absolutely amazing driving, gone from P21 to P17 in the space of a lap, and now look what's happened behind him. He's just left that battle brewing away. Giuseppe Nazzo is still only 1/10 ahead of James Hobden, and the person that's had the best seat in the house for all of this is Bram van Uitven at the very tail end. But everybody still nose to tail, and Taylor Lane once again disappearing into the distance. He seems to find a battle, carve his way through it, and just carry on going.
Well, he certainly is going fiercely forward. He's certainly driving for the right team, that's for sure. And, you know, we mentioned Nick Tandy, the factory Porsche driver. That's the sort of move he would have pulled off, taking 2 people at once, going so late on the brakes there. That was just fantastic to watch. And he's made it look very easy, but I can tell you, viewers, that is not easy. That normally ends up in one monumental accident. But very good move from Taylor Lane, and given good respect to the other drivers as well. It's very easy for the other driver to make an incident as well, for the driver being overtaken. So good stuff from all concerned there.
It definitely was, and I've got to say, I am, well, still lost for words for what Taylor did going into turn 7. Very late on the brakes. That looks like that's Giuseppe Nazzo locking up a brake once again, and James Hobden still trying to get up the inside, and another lock brake from Giuseppe Nazzo. So whether all this battling has cooked his tyres, and he's really starting to lose out now. He's very quickly going to be under pressure from Bram van Uitven. If he's not careful, James Hobden disappearing into the distance now as well, trying to copy Taylor Lane. You can still see them nose to tail, but I don't think Giuseppe is going to let him get away with it that lightly. Kamil Yagizoglu up in the order, currently 4th position, still defending from Marius Janka for Manatee Racing, going through the final corner. These two have been glued together as well, but it doesn't look like they've been battling majorly hard. Just Marius happy to sit behind him, save that extra bit of fuel, and Camille is really just punching a very nicely shaped BMW hole in the air, just so Marius can maybe stretch a tank that extra lap longer and see whether he can get the overcut made. But once again, it's going to come back to strategy.
Yep, this is both of these drivers working well together, and that's something that you can do even if it's somebody who's not on your team. It's a competitor, but sometimes it can be in both of your interests to work together and not make life too difficult, particularly in a long endurance race like this, and to sort of work together using that draft effect. In fact, I was very fortunate to commentate with former IndyCar driver Richie Hearn the other day, and he said that in the Indy 500, it's obviously very important, the draft effect, and he referred to it as a dancing partner. I thought that was a very good explanation. So you've got to find yourself a good dancing partner. It's just like being back at school in the school disco. You have to try and find the best dancing partner.
Very true, but people dancing at the moment is Bram van Aertsven, looking to see whether he can get his way all the way around the outside of Giuseppe Nazzo. We've seen the inside be the line that everybody prefers, but it looks like he's going to get the cut back on Giuseppe. So Bram van Aertsven reading the situation perfectly, going in towards turn 2. He's going to have to be very late on the brakes to get the move done there. Giuseppe doesn't get caught out on the brakes this time by. He's come wise to the move, and it looks like Bram van Aertsven has gone a little bit sideways into turn 2. And it's really affected him through that entire section, and he's dropped back to the tune of about 8/10. A little further up the order, we've still got battles going on pretty much everywhere. This is Ronald Moons now coming under pressure from Hendrik de Grave for Flemish Sim Sports. So 2 Porsches once again battling nose to tail, and it seems to be the Porsches and the BMWs really are a formula for absolutely amazingly close racing. But I say that, we're going to look up towards the BMWs. We've now got Kamil Jagiełoglu defending as hard as he can from Marius Janke. We were saying just on the lap prior that these two aren't looking like they're battling so hard, but Marius for Manatee Racing looked for the cutback and can't quite get the move done. The move has been made further back though. That's Hendrik de Grave now leading Ronald Moons. So lots of chopping and changing up the order, and I'm struggling to keep up with it all.
Yep, here we go. Here's another change of the Dynamics racing car of Kamil Jagiełoglu coming through in the number 43 BMW. So I think they must be listening to our commentary, Jack. So they just thought, all right, you said we're working together. We're just going to make you both a liar, make you both look silly, that you don't know what you're talking about. So sometimes it can get to that point in the stint where they just think, right, I've had enough sitting behind you. You're too slow. I'm coming by. It's funny, whenever I think about Dynamics racing, I think about Honda touring cars, Jack. I think of Gordon Shedden and Matt Neal and Dan Camish, not a BMW.
It does. It sounds quite weird, doesn't it? If they were Team Dynamics Racing, I would 100%. Like, it would be very, very weird. And it weird just saying Dynamics Racing and seeing, yeah, big BMW M8 GTE cars racing nose to tail. But I've got to say that it's almost touring car-esque battling. Very, very close. Very, very well, touring cars like to trade a little bit more paint than we've seen today. But Kamil Jagiełoglu and Marius Janke in the BMWs still just about clinging together, but you can see the battle still roaring away in the background. That's Marius Janke now leading Hendrik de Grave, if I can get the right camera. There we go. So Hendrik de Grave leading Ronald Moons. Still getting my timings mixed up, but Ronald Moons just about on the coattails of Hendrik de Grave, keeping the dream alive in the number 69 car, just about within draft assistance range. Looking a little further down the order, we've still got this battle, including Giuseppe Nazzo and Bram van Aertsven. James Hobden has slowly started to disappear into the distance. I say that as he gets a bad run coming out of the hairpin, and that's dropped him back into the clutches of Giuseppe Nazzo. And Taylor Lane, wow, he made the move done and disappeared into the distance, because he's now almost 6 seconds up the road, and his next target is just 8/10 up the road. That's Dominic Forster.
Yep, in the Ferrari, so it's Porsche versus Ferrari now as we come through the final, or the second to final part of the circuit through Gendebien Bend and down to Le Mans Curve. I tell you what, Taylor Lane, he really is cutting through the field very impressively. And of course, we've got the battle of the Bumblebee cars here. We've got two yellow and black machines between the Ferrari and the Porsche. But yeah, Taylor Lane really moving forward very, very strongly.
He's doing a great job, and the firstly forward driver, he's done it very cleanly as well. I don't think I've seen a spot of damage on that car throughout the race, and we're only 5 minutes away from the 1 hour mark. So within the next 10 minutes, I would be expecting to see cars dive into the pits for their second and final pit stop, and that will hopefully drag them to the end of the race. But the lead margin between Rob Thiessen and Billy Fletcher is still about the same. So Billy Fletcher has clearly decided that he doesn't want to be left behind, and the gap is still floating between 1.7 and 1.8 seconds between those two. 6 seconds now behind this lead battle is Antoine Dupin. in a world of his own. He will only just about be able to see the leaders, and he definitely won't be able to see Kamil Jagizoglu in his rearview mirror. 18 seconds behind is Kamil. There's the gap between the two. And Kamil is still preoccupied with the attentions of Marius Janke for Manatee Racing. And we're going to go back to this battle because it's really, really hotting up between Taylor Lane and Dominic Forster. That's the gap between the two now, only 2.5 tenths between them. And we know how good Taylor Lane is on the brakes going into this right-hander. He has a look to the inside, decides he's not going to make the move. Well, he has a very, very late look as well because he's thinking that he's not going to get the car slowed down. But still under the rear wing is Taylor. Firstly forward driver looking to get one over on the privateer Romanian, and it looks like that was Dominic blinking in and out, so that might just throw Taylor off his stride a little bit. But Taylor Lane still. Go on, Peter.
I say that's not what you want to see when you're trying to battle someone really closely and you start blinking, because then you start worrying about netcode issues and all kinds of things where you can end up in contact without even realizing it. It is a little bit frustrating. It's just one of these things you've just got to deal with. You know, it's no different than if you were maybe perhaps following a car in front of you who was, you know, sliding all over the place and getting really loose and kind of wild over the curbs and stuff, and you would probably give them a metre or two more room. It's exactly the same in sim racing. It's just a different problem to deal with. But I have to say, Taylor Lane, he will probably, I would say, making that move into Cunningham Corner, where he's so much better on the brakes than everyone around him to come in. Now, I want to talk about tyres, because it didn't look like Tyson or Fletcher took tyres in their first stop. But now as we approach the hour mark, you've got to think that it's going to be really hard to make the tyres last all the way to the end of the race for an hour and a half. Perhaps with the track temperatures maybe low enough to make it work, but it's really, really hard. You know, track temperature 22 degrees, that's not too bad at all. What would you do, Jack, if you were Tyson or Fletcher? Would you take that 20-second penalty to fit tyres?
I'm not sure I would, because if they go into the pits with only 20-25 minutes of the race remaining, if they can drive a second a lap quicker on tyres, then very well done to them. But I don't think it will happen with the track, like you say, slowly heating up. It's actually 26 degrees at the moment, so it's gained 3 degrees from where we started, and I think that after the pit stop, Billy Fletcher and Rob Thiessen will be closer than ever as well. So yes, you want fresh tyres for that battle, but if one of the drivers does take tyres and one of them doesn't, it's going to be a very, very last-minute dash to get the move made, and I don't think it will happen. So in this situation, personally, I probably wouldn't take tyres, and I would see what I can do about dragging them to the very end of the race. But we're now looking at Taylor Lane getting the better move, getting the better run, coming out of that right-hander, and it looks like, yes, wasn't expecting Dominic Forster to put up much of a fight there. He looks like he might have had a slowdown as well, because he really, really has dropped off the back. 1.1 seconds already between the two. Just behind this battle is John McConville, looking to get past Giuseppe Nazzo. Giuseppe really has been in the wars today, and John McConville has lost 8 positions, so seeing what he can do about recovering the positions he's lost. He's going to be in the draft, and we know the BMW is very, very good on the straights, and the Porsches, yes, it does have the acceleration out of the corner, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough to fend off the grunt of the BMW. John McConville now looking to the inside, going in towards Sunset, late on the brakes, gets the move done, but still almost side by side. But the Porsche will have the acceleration, and it looks like he's got the preferred line, maybe going for the cutback, and he will have the draft assistance going in towards turn 1, and we know the Porsches are very strong going in towards turn 1. If he can get up the inside, he might just get the move done. John McConville filling his mirrors late on the brakes. He's still on the inside, takes the very shallow line in, so they're going to be very, very close on exit. Much room given between the two. Great driving between them. So James Hobden up the road will be seeing all of this in his mirrors, and you can just see how much these two have slowed each other down. Giuseppe Nazzo really going to be keeping an eye on his mirrors, because there is Bram van Oudsven between the two. So a 2-way battle very quickly turned into a 3-way battle. And that seems to be a general rule of thumb for the race, because you can be battling one other driver, and before you know it, there's going to be four other drivers looking for the same position.
Yeah, you see, the worst feeling is when you see a driver just slowly getting bigger and bigger and bigger in your rear view mirror, and that can be where, you know, if you're one of these drivers, now might not be such a bad time to go into pit lane, particularly for the Porsche of Nazzo, who's kind of getting bashed around a little bit. So it might be a good idea for him to jump out of this sequence, come into pit lane, and perhaps if he's losing lap speed, maybe even just take tyres so that he's got good tyres for the end of the race. Of course, if you did take tyres now, you are, like you say, you are taking quite a bit of a quite a bit of a time penalty. However, when it gets to that last lap dust up, if you've got more or less fresh tyres and your competitor's been on those tyres for 85 minutes, you've got a big advantage.
You really do, and we're seeing the first of the pit stops, or the first of the second pit stops. We've got Hendrik de Grave for Flemish Sim Sports in the pitch. You hear the revs rising between the two. Steven de Wolf and Steve Cooley are going into the pits this lap as well. Jesse Hendricks crossing the line now, picking up all of the positions. He's going to be very close to Hendrik de Grave on exit. Taylor Lane has also joined everybody in the pits. So the fiercely forward driver deciding that now is the time. And there is Bram van Uitven going into the pits as well. So maybe deciding that he was only going to lose more time behind the Porsche 911 RSR of Giuseppe Nalzo. We'll keep an eye on our leaders though, because Rob Thiessen and Billy Fletcher still just about 2.5 seconds between the two, and they're very quickly going to go onto lap 31 of the race. So around 15 laps, you can stretch a tank by the looks of it. It looks like Billy Fletcher didn't get the run that he wanted going out onto the back stretch, because he has now lost another 0.3 of a second. Both of them staying out on circuit. We've got a car sideways. That looks like the BMW of Louis Correa. We'll have a look back just to see who that was. Louis Correa going around the final corner, over-rotates the car. Does a great job of keeping it out of the wall on the outside. Stops it before the pit entry wall on the inside, and waits for everybody to come by. We'll go back live with him just to see whether he's got back going, and he has indeed. Literally just as we cut back to him, he's grabbed the gear and carried on. Going through turn one, the car doesn't look like it's got any damage in its back handling how he wants it to. But the leaders, they surely have got to pit within the next couple of laps, Peter, because they're going to be leaving it very late otherwise.
Yep, the light will be coming on, and that dreaded fuel light that we all, even in the real world driving on the road, we all just dread that fuel light coming on. Yeah, interesting strategy there from Correa, because when he spun, he was perfectly pointed to just drive into pit lane, and maybe he's already been into pit lane perhaps, but if he's needing to stop, it would have made sense to get that done then. And we've also got Taylor. He's come out of the lane. Sorry, I couldn't wait to say that. He's on his way. But this will be fascinating to see Thiessen and Fletcher. Now, if they were going to be taking tyres, they probably would have taken them by now, I would suggest, Jack. I think if you were going to take tyres, you'd probably have to pit that bit earlier just to make sure that you actually get the benefit of them. So it looks like they're going to go to the end on these tyres together, and it'll just come down to a battle between the two of them. But don't count out Dupin either. He's not a million miles away, and you just never know what could happen.
No, you really don't, and the gap between the top two is still around 2.8 seconds, so very similar to the initial pit window. And I am expecting Rob Thiessen to go into the pit this lap or the next one, and we may also see Billy Fletcher do the same reverse strategy as he did earlier on in the race. So Rob Thiessen staying out on the race circuit, Billy Fletcher doing exactly the same. Anton Dupin, what does he do? Going through the final corner now, keeping the lock on. He's not going into the pits this time either, so people midway down the order deciding that it is their time to go into the pit lane. But the lead runners at the moment still staying out on circuit. Lee Woodburn and Steve Cooley are getting nice and close for comfort. There's Lee Woodburn well, he's one of the privateer drivers out on circuit. Steve Cooley for Ronin Simsport Academy. Those two separated by about 0.6 of
it's interesting.
second.
The Ford,
Go on.
Sorry, Jack. The Ford has got, each car gives you slightly different information of your fuel usage, tyre temperature, all these kinds of things. But the Ford is really interesting. It actually gives you a miles per gallon readout, and it is depressing how low it is. It's something usually between 4.5 and 5 miles per gallon from this ironically named EcoBoost engine that they run in that Ford.
That's scarily low. It would probably mean you spend more on fuel than you do on the actual car. Bearing in mind it was what, £420,000 I think you said earlier. And if you said that they're going for around £1 million nowadays, that's going to be a very expensive car to buy, let alone to run. So it doesn't seem like a cheap car to get into. But Steve Cooley clearly isn't phasing him, because look how big that gap has got now. 1.8 seconds, almost to the tune of about 2 seconds between those two. Steve Cooley just leaving Lee Woodburn behind. The leaders going through the final couple of corners now. There's Rob Thiessen, so that'll be why the gap opened up between Lee Woodburn and Steve Cooley. Steve clearly saw the leaders coming up in the rearview mirror. Billy Fletcher just behind as well, still yet to get by. Steve Corley gets past now. We've had an incident for Kamil Yagizoglu. We'll have a look back at that in a moment just to see what Rob Thiessen does this lap. He's going nice and slow into there. There we go, Rob Thiessen, our leader in the number 205 G-Drive Exemia car, going into the pit lane. Billy Fletcher once again doing the reverse strategy, staying out on circuit, and that's really interesting to see, Peter.
It is. He's obviously not wanting to mirror Tyson too closely, so we'll see if he does the same thing and comes in at the end of this lap. And this particular lap from Billy Fletcher is the most important so far of the race. He really needs to push as hard as he possibly can through this lap to try and recover some time while he's in clean air. He's been so impressive so far in this race, and remember, we do have a long championship, number of rounds. We're off to Monza next time, and my goodness me, if you think the draft has had an effect here, wait till we get to Monza with all the long straights there.
Yeah, it really will play an effect, and I think that will also show the BMW off as well, because we've said it's got the grunt on the straights, and well, Monza is renowned for the amount of straights that it's got, so I think it'll be quite interesting to see whether the BMW straight line speed will be overshadowed by the Porsche's acceleration out of the 3 chicanes at Monza. But we'll look back at the incident for Kamil Yagizoglu. So going through the right hand there, flicks the car one way, flicks the car the other after collecting the grass, grabs the brakes, gets as quickly as he can off the racing line and gets back up to speed. Not a major incident for the Dynamics racing driver, and he's still got he's actually got Rob Thiessen behind him now. So Rob Thiessen has come out behind Kamil Yagizoglu, and I'm not sure where he'll end up after all is said and done, because we've still got Billy Fletcher turning laps, as well as somebody we didn't see earlier on. That's Anton Dupin, who's still remained out on circuit. I am sorry everybody, just another blink in and out on my end. That is 100% on me. I can't blame it on anything else. But Billy Fletcher still out on circuit. Does he go into the pits this time by? He does indeed. Anton Dupin, I'm guessing, will follow him.
Yeah, but he certainly did in the previous time. Yeah, little dab of the brakes there from Dupin in the Ford, so he's coming into pit lane now as well. So only 23 minutes to go now for Rob Tyson. He was caught up in traffic there, whereas it looked like Billy Fletcher had pretty open lap, so this could be very, very important as Rob Tyson's getting a bit of a draft from the car in front, but this will be this is just the worst time to come against a slower car.
It really is. Going through the final corner, you can see him taking the wider line in, and that draft will have played an effect, but he's got to compromise his exit because the lapped car is going into the pit lane. We're still looking at Rob Tyson. Billy Fletcher is now on pit exit. You can see Billy just a little further up the road. I don't think he's going to get the move done. Rob Tyson through turn 1. Billy Fletcher has come out once again behind Rob Tyson, and it doesn't look like the work paid off for Billy, so he's now got to set his focus either on catching Rob Tyson or remaining in that second position. We've got to remember that though, he is the fastest bronze driver out on circuit at the moment. P1 in class and P2 overall. Really is a good performance from Billy Fletcher. There's Anton Dupin, just a little bit further back than I was expecting, still around 6 seconds away from Billy Fletcher, but the lead gap now 2.2 seconds between Rob Tyson and Billy Fletcher, so I don't think that gap will come much closer towards the end of the race, going off what we've already seen. However, a battle that still hasn't dissipated is between Giuseppe Nazzo and Bram van Uytsven.
Yep, not at all. Just pure old Giuseppe. He's always had someone to worry about either side of him. As we look at Bram van Uyten there as well, so they've not been far apart at all in this race. Yeah, also for Fletcher as well, his strategy not working out there, because of course Tyson would have had one lap to get his tyres back up to temperature and get himself back up to speed again. So for Fletcher, he's got to still do that and then get back onto the case of Rob Tyson. However, we have seen him deploy really good pace at times, so this race is far from over. Just one last point on Monza next week. I would perhaps throw the Ferrari in there as well, because of course it was very much in favour at Le Mans a couple of weeks ago in the iRacing Le Mans 24 Hours. So I think the Ferrari might be a feature as well when we get to Monza.
I really think it will, and while we're still on the subject of manufacturers, you can see on the timing tower, we've had it up there for most of the stream, the spread of the different cars throughout the order, and you can see where the Ferraris start to peak into place just outside the top 10 is the first Ferrari, and then towards the top end of the order is the Fords and the Porsches making quite a strong appearance as well. And the BMW of Rob Tyson, the man we're looking at the moment, seems to be sort of out of place from the BMWs, because a lot of the BMWs towards the end of the order, for example, if we look right down at Bram van Uitven, if it moves the timing tower down, which it doesn't, just my luck, we'll actually look at Louis Correa. There we go. You can already see, well, lots of Ferraris, and there are the rest of the BMWs, and you can sadly see the retirements from the race. That's Luke Wubbs so far. Ignore Herber at the bottom. He is just the race direction for this race, doing a great job as always. And speaking of a Belgian, we've got Ronald Moons now, nice and close to the, falling foul of Kamil Yagizoglu. And Kamil is somebody we've looked at a lot throughout the stream, and it's all been for the right reasons, because he's been battling very, very hard.
Yep, he's been really strong. Good opening round for him. Currently sitting in 7th position and looking strong for some really good points. And we've talked a lot about balance of performance over the broadcast. How you can have a BMW, a Porsche, Ferrari, and Ford GT all battling together. All very different cars. To give you an idea of how extreme those measures can be, for the Ferrari, for the 488, the road car runs 660 horsepower. The race car, 490. That's how much it has to be pegged back for competition use. You would think that the race car would have more power, but actually the Ferrari, it has to be pared back quite significantly. So it's amazing what they have to do to get the cars all out onto an even playing field. And of course at Le Mans, we don't have it here in iRacing, but at Le Mans and in IMSA we see the Corvette as well, which is another kettle of fish altogether as well.
I can imagine it is, and I've got to say, I did not know that the Ferrari had to be reined in to be illegal to race in the selected series across the world. But I was just looking over at the timing screens, and it's just sort of dawned on me how many positions have changed throughout the race. That's the gap, pardon me. I wanted to click on the gain. There we go. So you can now see on the left-hand side of your screen who has gained how many positions. And Bram van Uitven has gained 13 positions. Chris Moretta has gained 12, the Meraki racing driver, doing a great job, starting in 24th position, very, very close to a top 10 finish, in fact. He's got 3 seconds to gain before he gets onto the tail end of the Simracersworld esports driver of Matteo Sufi, the Belgian driver, and then 4 seconds up the road from the two is Kevin Murray for Galactics Motorsport, who has lost 3 positions, so he has gone the way he didn't want to go. But lots and lots of position change up and down the order, mainly green, but there are a couple of red drivers throughout the order who have just lost positions from where they started, and I think most notably the top 2 are still in the positions they started.
They are. They've been the standout of the field, of course. And I always find the biggest mover, we've seen some drivers, they are climbing 12 or even 13 places in some cases. They actually have Dunlop have an award in the Australian V8 Supercars Championship, which started off restarted last weekend in Sydney. And they have basically a hard charger, Dunlop Hard Charger Award it's called. And it's basically for the driver who gains the most positions over the seasons. But the drivers themselves, they call it the, I'll not use the expletive, but basically the Poor Qualifier Award.
I could see why, if I'm honest, because obviously if you are the most strongest driver in qualifying, the only way you can really go is upwards, and I can see why they call that, and I can hazard a guess as to what they actually call it, but obviously that's not suitable for stream. We've had an incident apparently for Kamil Yagizoglu, someone we were just looking at. Let's see what happened to Kamil. He's very, very slow, and the car seems to just stop. That looks like some sort of hardware issue for Kamil, and it looks like he's taken the tow back to the pit lane, and he has indeed. So Kamil Yagizoglu, very late on in the race, has gone back to the pit lane, and he's still there as well. So all that hard work has come undone. He's now in 26th position, which obviously means now Ronald Moons doesn't have to worry about Kamil Yagizoglu, but his position has very quickly changed now because Kimber Haight is just behind as well. So he's got rid of one Belgian, and he's got another one to deal with now, because Kimber Haight for the Flemish Sim Sports 4GT is very, very close to the tail end of Ronald Moons, and with only 15 minutes of the race to go, I can't see this battle going anywhere soon.
Well, I tell you what, Jack, you're right about those Fords, how they're getting really loose and oversteery coming around, particularly at Sunset Bend. Of course, Sebring is famous for, or infamous for, its bumps on the circuit, one of the bumpiest circuits in the world. And many drivers say that finishing or winning the 12 hours of Sebring is actually harder than winning the 24 hours of Le Mans. So basically, so harsh is the surface, and you never get a moment's rest at all. But of course, the Ford probably has the most sophisticated aerodynamics of any car in the class. And maybe when you're going over those bumps, it maybe just disturbs that aero, and the car it has grip, and then all of a sudden it doesn't. But I tell you what, those Fords look quite a handful coming around, particularly Sunset Bend around the final corner.
That really does seem like the trend. And speaking of the Ford GT, it looks like Steve Cooley in one of the Ronin Simsport cars has had an incident in his Ford GT at Sunset, where we were just talking about the Ford looking very, very lively. Doesn't get collected by one of the Ferraris out on circuit. I'm not sure how he managed that, but it just looks like he over-rotated the car, and it says he crashed twice, but I think that might have just been a bit of contact that wasn't there between the two cars. But Taylor Lane, we've looked at him before now, side by side with Giuseppe Nazzo. Giuseppe really has been a hotspot for battles, and look at that braking performance from Taylor Lane. Over-rotates the car, he goes slightly deep into the corner, but look at that acceleration. A great drive out of the corner from Taylor Lane, and once again, very, very confident on the brakes and willing to throw the car around the outside. Looks like he's got the move done, but Giuseppe not willing to back down just as yet. About a car length between the two, but I don't think he's going to get the move done there as Giuseppe. We know how strong Taylor is on the brakes going into that right-hander. And Taylor Lane picking up another position, promoting himself up to P18.
Yeah, he has been charging forward all the time, has Taylor Lane there, and I have to say, like you say, got fantastic drive out of the hairpin, and then down towards his favourite Cunningham corner, he was able to defend with his fantastic late braking. So he's going to be exciting, I think, to watch over the course of the series. Obviously very good on the brakes. He's got the brakes spot on that 911 RSR. And when we head to Monza, it does have a lot of long straights, but of course a long straight has to head at some point, and there's some incredibly heavy braking sections at Monza, so watch out for him to do pretty well, as we see Ronald Moons in the 69 Race Masters Esports Porsche with a Ford for company behind him.
Yeah, so Kimber Haight in one of the highest placed Fords in the order, the highest actually being Anton Dupin. So Anton Dupin has got past Billy Fletcher. I thought the gap had opened up. Let me have a look back through what happened. There we go. So we'll have a look at the replay. What happened to Billy Fletcher going into the hairpin? Does he lock a brake? He does indeed. Massive, massive sideways moment for Billy Fletcher. Rotates the car through 180 degrees, punching the throttle in anger, just in desperation. Also trying to get the car pointed the right way. Waits for Anton Dupin to get by. So not necessarily what Billy wanted to do, but it's what he felt he had to do. But all that hard work throughout the race just seems to be coming undone the further into the race we go. 2 seconds is the gap between those two now. There it is. So Anton Dupin, the highest placed Ford at the moment for Flemish Sim Sports. And funnily enough, the second highest placed Ford GT on circuit is his Flemish Sim Sports teammate of Kimber Haight. But that really is a very last minute change between the top three. So Anton Dupin inheriting the second spot on the podium. And with only 10 minutes of the race to go, Billy Fletcher has got his handful on getting that position back.
Yeah, we've only got about 7 laps left in this race, so he's really got to calm down now and focus, because I suspect, Jack, that lockup is a very uncharacteristic mistake from our third place driver right now, and I think that might be something to do with the tyres. You know, after an hour and 19 minutes, these tyres will be pretty second hand. Of course, that will apply to his competitors as well, but I think that that definitely had an effect there. But he'll need to be careful here, not overdrive trying to catch Dupin. It's a long championship, and of course he's the top place bronze rated driver. I wonder how long he'll keep that bronze rated status. I suspect he might be getting upgraded to a silver, but yeah, he's got to be careful here in the last 6 or 7 laps. If he just trusts his pace, hits his marks, he should be able to catch up with Dupin.
He should indeed, and like you say, it really isn't worth battling for that second place this early on in the season. Yes, the few extra points would help, but being in third position overall and first in class, like we mentioned, he will have a nice haul of points coming his way, and then going towards Monza, that's when he can focus on maybe getting one over on Dupin. but the gap now to the leader is 8.7 seconds. So Rob Thiessen, all he has to do is bring it home, and going into the closing 10 minutes of the race, I'm sure he can do that. He can even afford just to ease off that slight bit as well, but it doesn't look like he's doing that because he's still posting 1 minute 58. Billy Fletcher in Furosity has posted a 1 minute 57.93, so 4/10 quicker than our current leader. So really not happy with that mistake. He's now 1.7 seconds away from the tail end of Antoine Dupin, and with not many laps remaining, I'll probably only say 4 or 5 laps left. He's really got to open the taps to catch up to Antoine Dupin, and then obviously he's got to pass him as well to gain that position. So Billy Fletcher really doing everything he can. Let's see how he negotiates the hairpin this time. Over-rotates the car a little bit, and wow, that was very close. I thought it'd be good to watch just to see whether it's still in the back of his mind, and he still can't manage to nail that corner. Marv Goes Racing in the chat saying downshifted on that surface switch. It's a bump, and then you lose the rear of the car, and that does seem to look like what happens. There's a very sudden surface change and surface elevation change as well, which just seems to over-rotate the car, and obviously a lot of the weight in this Porsche, as previously mentioned, is over the rear axle, so it's very easy to over-rotate the rear of the car. A little further down the order, we've still got Steve Norman battling away. I say that, but commentator's curse for you. Lee Woodburn makes a mistake and drops right the way down the order, and he's going to lose out to 2 drivers there. That was Thies Vandenberg for Dynamics Racing, and Steve Norman for Vulcan Sim Racing also gets by as well.
Yeah, that braking zone there, we've talked about it a lot over the broadcast, coming into hairpin bend is there's good point on the gear changing. It's very easy to rush the gear changing. You know, you're usually in 5th, maybe even 6th gear and going down to 1st or 2nd, so you're having to go down the gearbox, and it's very easy to rush it. And if you rush it, your chances of locking up just get higher and higher. So you really want to just time that gear change very carefully. You know, 6th, 5th, 4th, or just count it through in your head, trying not to rush it, because that's exactly what's happened to Billy Fletcher there as well, and he's just locked up. So interesting that it happened two laps in a row. That'll be frustrating for Billy.
Yeah, and I'm sure what will be more frustrating now is he posted a 2 minutes 2.40. That's 4.5 seconds away from Rob Thiessen, our current leader. I haven't seen him pop up on the event viewer saying that he's gone off the circuit. Maybe just a slow rotation of the Sebring circuit for him. We've had a very scary moment for Steve Cooley. Apparently he went off track for 15 seconds, which really is quite the time. Going into the right hand, he locks both front brakes, carries on, and well, that's all we can see from that camera angle. Do we have another one? There we go. So he locked up, went straight on, kept out of the wall, and spent a lot of the time just making sure he does everything he can to rejoin the circuit nice and safely, not wanting to cut across the line. There's Taylor Lane coming through the bottom of shot, and it looks like he's going to pick up the position as well, going all the way around the outside. Great driving from Steve Cooley, deciding that there is not the place to rejoin the circuit. But he's got back going again now in P18, and Taylor Lane picking up another position, and is now in P17, gaining 13 positions from where he started. So well and truly the biggest mover in the field, and overall been an absolutely immense drive from him.
Yeah, it's been very entertaining. He's really driven superbly and made a very good move up the field from a poor qualifying. Of course, you know, Sebring is such a difficult circuit to get right, but once you do get it right and you get into a rhythm, it can be really rewarding. So perhaps just wasn't quite getting it all together in qualifying, but proven that he's got much better pace than where he qualified. So really impressive. I tell you what, there's just sports car racing at Sebring is just so special. You know, it's been since the early 1950s we've had top level sports car racing at Sebring, and actually Sir Stirling Moss, the first time he ever drove a non-English car, he won the Sebring 12 Hour back in the mid-1950s.
Wow, that's certainly quite an achievement just to finish the Sebring 12 Hours. I know from personal experience is quite a tricky task after having a hardware issue. Personally, that looks like that's Stephen DeWolf making a mistake, and Chris Moretta making a very similar mistake as well. I was going to bring up that Stephen DeWolf had got past Chris Moretta, but Stephen looks like he dropped a wheel onto the outside of that corner. We'll have a look back just to see what happened. So Chris Moretta went off first for Meraki Racing, late on the brakes, doesn't look like he can get it slowed down in time. There he goes off the circuit, and Stephen DeWolf grabs the grass, grabs the brakes, hits the wall, and loses the position. We'll go back live with him just to see the gap between the two. 3.8 seconds now. So Chris Moretta promoted up into P11, and I think it was Andy Hopley in chat was asking to see whether Chris Moretta could get into the top 10, and as of yet I don't look like that dream will come to any fruition, but Matteo Sufi will be the man to change that. 8 seconds up the road is Matteo, but I don't think he will make a mistake this late on in the race, because looking at it, we haven't seen him to great extent throughout the race, and that can only really be a good thing. It means he's kept it nice, clean and consistent, and he's slowly started to work his way up the order, gained 5 positions from where he started, and it just seems like he's got that Ferrari under control.
Yep, and Ian Roger Penske Roots will be very happy to see the Simracersworld car getting some good TV time here. That's very important for our future gainful employment, Jack. I wonder if he pays top 10 bonuses to his drivers. Maybe they should ask if that's the case as he heads around Hairpin Bend. Now, another Stirling Moss story there about Hairpin Bend. Stirling Moss in 1957 slowed down and was given a bottle of Coca-Cola from a photographer during the race, consumed it over the following lap, and then threw the empty bottle at the photographer on the next lap. I mean, is there anybody on this earth who was cooler than Sir Stirling Moss? I don't think so.
I've got to say, I didn't know that, but that is... I can't even imagine that being a thing. That's something I can't... Yeah. So he pulled over, decided to get a quick little refreshment, drank it over the next lap, and then threw it back at the photographer.
Correct. Yes, that is exactly what he did.
Only Stirling, but I tell you what, you wouldn't be able to get away with that today. I noticed a while ago at a GT World Challenge event, it was like a fair few years back, the windscreen wiper had stopped working, and to clear the windscreen, somebody from the pit wall decided to throw a bucket of water onto the windscreen, and they got a very, very hefty fine from that. So you can imagine with today's regulations how much trouble Stirling Moss would have got into for pulling over, deciding to get a quick refreshment, and then throwing a glass projectile at one of the photographers. But doesn't seem like we've had any issue like that today. I think that was Dominic Forster once again blinking in and out. We've seen that happen throughout the race. The Romanian clearly not managing to sustain the level he'd quite like, going around the final corner for the 42nd time of asking, going on to lap 43 of the race. Jesse Hendricks just behind, still hot on his heels. So this is a battle between both Ferraris for P13 overall. So the Dynamics racing driver chasing down the Privateer Romanian. Still very close between the two. A very similar battle to one a little further down the order. This is James Hobden chasing down the BMW of Jonathan Steggers. So lots of close battles up and down the order. But at the moment, it doesn't look like anybody's deciding where they want to finish. And once again, we're going to have to look at Giuseppe Nazzo because he is involving himself in another battle between Jonathan Steggers and James Hobden.
Yeah, he's just been given absolutely no peace in this race. He will be exhausted as we reach an hour and 20 minutes of 22 minutes. An hour and 28 minutes and 22 seconds of action. So those tyres will be absolutely dead by now. That's probably why we're seeing quite a lot of incidents out on circuit as Giuseppe's having to go defensive here as one of the BMWs, the Flemish Simsport BMWs, coming around the outside there, coming down into Hairpin Bend, down the gearbox to go. Careful not to lock up, very easy to do. Of course, all these GTE cars have a kind of warning light system, a Bosch warning light system, which basically tells you when you're locking up the brakes, and when those lights start to illuminate, oh, it's the worst feeling ever.
It really is, but look at Giuseppe now. He goes very, very late into the corner, and that's an incident between the two. That was Jonathan Steggers locking the rear brakes by the looks of it and spinning into the side of Giuseppe. So as Giuseppe, like we mentioned, he's had no peace throughout this race and hasn't been involved in an incident as of yet, but that's just what happens. We'll have to have a look back just to see what happened. There's the break away from the Flemish Simsports BMW, and nothing Giuseppe can do. He wouldn't have known that was happening in the rearview mirror until it was too late, and a big hit in the right rear quarter of that Porsche 911 RSR. We'll go back live with it just to see whether he's still got control of that Porsche. It does look like he's managed to get away with that pretty lightly, but he's still just about keeping it on the road, as I think we are about to go on to the final lap of the race. Only 5 seconds to go. Will we get another lap out of this? Rob Thiessen driving up to the line now. It's going to be very close, just tick past the 1 hour 30 mark, and I think we are going to be treated to another very, very close lap of racing.
Yep, he was. He might have even wanted to lift off slightly there to make sure that was the end of the race, but he's obviously enjoying himself so much. I thought, oh, he'll just keep going. I mean, what can you say? Poor old Giuseppe there in the Porsche did nothing wrong, and it just talk about that as a different type of commentator's curse. We were talking all about those lock-up lights and the that happens when you lock the brakes up, and that's exactly what happened to Steggers. And I tell you what, on board his BMW, that dashboard would have been lighting up like a Christmas tree, telling him that you've not only locked up one brake, you've locked up all four, and you're sideways into the side of the Porsche of Giuseppe there.
Yeah, really nothing that he could have done, but one person that really isn't struggling with the BMW is this man here, Rob Thiessen for G-Drive Racing Exemia. They filled out the podium yesterday in the GT Pro Series, and we expected nothing less from Rob Thiessen, and he really has delivered. Started on pole position with a last lap attempt of gaining pole position, and he went and put it on the front row, and he's led the race for a sizable amount. The only time he's ever really dropped back into second position was during the pit stops throughout the race, but Billy Fletcher, his closest rival, really well, far back now, because I've just looked and he's 12 seconds behind Anton Dupin, and Anton Dupin is 10 seconds behind Rob Thiessen. So the top three have definitely separated apart, but there is the number 205 G-Drive Racing Exemia BMW going down the back straight for the final time here at Sebring, and an absolutely dominating drive from Rob Thiessen. Like I said, we expected nothing less from the G-Drive driver, and he really has delivered. Started on the front row, led from lights to flag, apart from a couple of switches in the middle. But Rob Thiessen, ladies and gentlemen, is your Sim Racers World GT Evo Series Round 1 winner for G-Drive Exemia. A great drive from him, if you'll pardon the pun. Anton Dupin for Flemish Sim Sports in the first Ford GT to cross the line, finishes in second position, and rounding out the podium is Billy Fletcher for Luxim 24 Esports in the first of the Porsche 911 RSRs. So 3 different manufacturers and 3 different teams on the podium, which really should just set the tone for a very close knitted season to come. But wow, what a race. And I've got to say, if that's anything close to what we're going to be treated to towards the end of the season, it's going to be a busy old few weeks for us.
It is, Jack. I have to say, I'm really looking forward to Monza in a fortnight's time. And like you say, I was thinking that as well. 3 different manufacturers, 3 completely different cars taking the 3 spots on the podium, and 3 different nationalities. We've got a Dutchman, a Belgian, and a Brit.
That's something I didn't notice as well. So really throwing a spanner in the works for the podium finishes. So everybody has got something to shout about aboard the top 3 steps. And obviously Billy Fletcher hasn't just finished on the overall podium, he's finished on the class podium as well, winning his class. So Billy Fletcher, the leading bronze driver. We're now looking out to Matthias Sophie, finishing 10th overall and 2nd in the bronze category. Chris Moretta for Meraki Racing, pushing hard for a top 10 finish, didn't quite get it done and finishes P11 overall. Stephen De Wolf for Dynamics Racing crosses the line P12. Dominic Forster P13. John McConville P14. Jesse Hendricks P15, and the very hard charging Taylor Lane manages to work his way all the way up into 16th position, and I'm sure if he was given one extra lap he'd probably find himself in 15th position. But Taylor Lane, I've got to say, standout driver for me throughout the race. And for those who didn't know, I'm trying not to be biased, but I am a firstly forward driver, but that's got to be one of the best performances I've seen all season from the media days and the GT Pro Series. But look what we're being treated to. Well, that's going to be an expensive fix towards the end of the race, but look what we're being treated to, Peter.
That's a Tesco's car park job, that one there. Yeah, I have to say, you kept that one quiet. That was your teammate doing all the hard charging as well.
I try not to be biased. I try not to be biased.
Seriously forward. Very well done indeed. Very well indeed. Oh, we're doing some burnouts as well. Oh, excellent. I like to see now. Who wants to do a donut for us? Come on, do a donut. I have to say, we see one of the now I've forgotten. Sorry, Quantum Racing cars there, the kind of green and black car. Now, of course, we both commentate on the Porsche Club of Great Britain Sim Racing Championship, and Austin Greatorex, championship contender, races for Quantum and has that livery on his 911 Cup car, and he does like a post-race donut, does does Austin. As we see one of the Fords there. I can't tell which number
That's
it
Kimber
is, but this is good. This is going to make some good cinematography. This action. This is just as entertaining as the race. Watching donut competition. Who's your pick? Who's your pick there for best donut?
I've got to say, the first one we're looking at the moment, Kimber Haight in the number 5 Flemish Sim Sports Ford. We were saying that the Ford is very, very scary on the rear end, and he's clearly just showing us that, well, it might be during the race, but when you want to do donuts, it's the piece of machinery you need. Well, that's John Tusting deciding that he doesn't want me to say that in the Quantum racing car, ploughing it into the wall. But that was it was a nice little treat. I wasn't expecting to see that towards the end of the race. I think we've still got a couple of drivers just sat around hanging about towards the end of the race, but as soon as the session ticks over, we should have some results for you. I think we've got them now, and I'm going to hand you over to the amazing Peter MacKay to run you through them.
Oh, thank you, Jack. So round 1 of the Simracersworld GT Evo series was won by the Dutchman Rob Tyson in the 205 BMW. In second place was Anton Dupin in the number 14 Forge GT from Flemish Sim Sports. And rounding out the podium, a brilliant performance from our bronze-rated driver, top-rated bronze-rated driver, was Billy Fletcher in his number 388 Porsche, run by Lux Sim 24 Esport. In fourth was Marius Janka. Fifth was Hendrik de Graaf. 6 was John Tusting. 7 was Kimber Haight. 8 was Ronald Moons. 9 was Kevin Morey. 10 was Matteo Sufi. 11th was Chris Moretta. 12th was Stephen DeWolf. 13 was Dominic Forster. 14 was John McConville. 15 Jesse Hendricks. 16 Taylor Lane. 17th Bram Van Uyten. 18th Steve Cooley. In 19th was James Hobden. 20th, Giuseppe Nazzo, who was very unlucky in his number 4 Porsche, just taken out later on in the race by Jonathan Steggers, who he was able to get past anyway. 22nd was Stephen Norman. 23rd, Thijs Berg. 24th was Lee Woodburn. 25th was Samil Yagizoglu. Apologies, Camille, for making a mess of your name there. 26th was Louis Correa. 27th, Scotty Angelo. And 28th, Sven Calvert. And rounding out the end of the race, 29th is Paul Clist, and 30th, Luke Woobs.
Yeah, so massive thank you to Peter for running us through all the results. It's definitely a big old grid we've got to get through, but a great job nonetheless from all the drivers out on circuit, even though Luke Woobs sadly didn't get towards the end of the race. And his fiercely forward teammate, of course, Taylor Lane, did an absolutely amazing job finishing P16. But let's see who we've got in the interview waiting room. I think we might just have a couple of drivers in there at the moment. Let's have a look. We do indeed. So let's bring in Taylor Lane. Sorry about the noise, everybody. For some reason, my streamer mode hasn't activated on Discord. But our 16th place finisher, Taylor Lane. What a drive, Taylor. That was an absolutely amazing job, carving your way up through the order, gaining 14 positions, and you just seem to approach battles and work your way through them. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, that was actually really fun, that race. Yeah. It was annoying because I had the pace for top 10, maybe top 5, but every time I got towards like 15th, 16th, something wrong just got thrown at me. It's like, first thing was screen freezes, so I was trying to do things whilst I was driving. Next thing was the pit stops, I forgot to turn my tyres off, so yeah. Everything went wrong and it didn't need to be.
Well, we definitely didn't think anything went wrong for you. Obviously, finishing 16th overall, gaining 14 positions, you were clearly doing something right. And if you're saying you came to strive throughout the race, I can't wait to see what you'll be able to do at Monza at round 2. Speaking of Monza, going into round 2 and being in the Porsche, we noticed it's got very good acceleration, but maybe falls foul of the BMWs and the Fords, and possibly even the Ferraris in terms of general power on the straights. Is that something you're going to consider and maybe put in an extra bit of practice for, just making sure that you can make that acceleration last down the straights at Monza?
I think I'll put in not the same amount of practice for it, but the slipstream should be really strong at Monza, so I think what we lose in top end power, we should gain in the slipstream. And because everyone is so close in this series, the slipstream should be effective the whole time.
Well, that'll be quite interesting to see as well, because maybe strategy will play a different part throughout Monza as well, because it's a very, very different circuit to Sebring. And while we're talking about Sebring, what are your thoughts on it? Because it's obviously quite a bumpy circuit, and we saw it catch a couple of people out in the Porsches, specifically our third place finisher Billy Fletcher. He sadly lost out on the brakes a couple of times going into the hairpin. What was that like for you in terms of the braking performance and maybe the slight instability of the Porsche?
I fell foul to it a few times. You go for, especially for the heavy braking. Can't remember the corner name, but it's the hairpin / chicane after Big Bend. But the big bumps during the braking zone catch out all the time. The back end was constantly moving through the heavy braking. But yeah, if you can handle it, it's great fun. All the other cars seem to handle the bumps really nicely, which is rather annoying to see.
Well, you kept the car under control throughout the race, and once again, another massive well done for a great performance, and we can't wait to see you at Monza. But while we do have you in the commentary booth, is there anybody you'd like to thank or shout out?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to the Thirsty Ford guys. Ollie runs a great team. We've got Porsche Sports somewhere on the car. We've also got SimPower on there, and I've done an oopsie. I've forgotten.
OpenCast software.
That's the one. Thank you, Jack. Thanks for being a good teammate. I'd also like to say thank you to the organisers of the league and you guys for putting on a great broadcast.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us in the box, and we look forward to seeing you at Monza.
Yeah, thank you.
That was Taylor Lane, our 16th place finisher overall. But Peter, shall we bring in our overall winner, Rob Tayson?
Good idea, Jack. Looking forward to having a chat with him.
Well, what I'll do is I'll leave you, Rob, in the capable hands of my astounding co-commentator, Mr. Peter MacKay.
Hey guys.
Hi, Rob. Congratulations on winning the inaugural race of the SRW GT Evo Series. How was it from the driver's seat for you today?
Well, it was a really great racing because I started with quali on P2, and then in the last lap I nailed my last lap, so went to P1. Think I made a great start, pulled away about the second or a half. And then, just started the fight with Billy Fletcher, but spun, gave back the spot to Billy because, was my fault. And then from that point on, it was full on it because I couldn't make any mistakes because the guys behind me were quite fast too. Every mistake will be punished in this series.
You certainly will. You're certainly under pressure all the way through. Now, Sebring is notorious for the bumps. How was your BMW M8 handling over those bumps today?
Well, my teammates made a really, really great setup. So the car was handling the bumps quite well. Didn't really unstable the car. So I did not have a lot of problems with those bumps.
Always what every driver wants to hear. Now, I understand that you're from Holland now, so I have the most important question of the broadcast. What is your favourite snack bar of your meal of choice at the snack bar? Would it be a croquette or bit of balls, or what do you normally go for?
Just go for the Berenklauw.
Ah, okay. I have to say I'm a croquette fan.
No.
My favourite.
No, let's go for the Berenklauw.
Okay. Well, next time I'm over in Holland, I need to try one of those. Broaden my horizons from the croquette. But there you go. I bet you've never been asked that in a post-race interview before.
I didn't. But original.
Before we let you go, Rob, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to live on Simracersworld TV?
Yes, I would really like to thank my team for giving me a great setup for the car, and all the guys that helped me with tips and tricks for this track and the race. So thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming to join us, Rob, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time at Monza.
Yes, we'll see you then. Have a good night and thank you for broadcasting.
Thanks, Rob. Take
Bye
care.
bye.
That was Rob Thiessen, our eventual winner, with some eye-opening questions from Peter MacKay. And I've got to say that that last question it had me stumped. I have no idea what what any of that was, but I've got to say,
We need to go on tour to Holland, Jack.
if you've got a snack recommendation, send it my way.
Yeah.
I do like a
Yeah.
good snack. But what we'll do is bring in Mr. Billy Fletcher, so our eventual third place finisher, rounding out the podium, but on the top step of the podium for the bronze class. So Billy, first of all, massive well done on a great result this evening. Probably not the way you wanted it to go towards the end of the race, but overall, towards the start of the race, it was really playing into your strengths, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a good fun race. I miscalculated a bit on the tyres. Also, I didn't help myself. I did a lot of laps in the Ford for this, but I decided to make the switch to the Porsche yesterday, and I hadn't done a full free stint running it yet, and it caught me out towards the end of that race. As you saw, 3 or 4 times it spat me off the track, but I must admit it was great fun. Really enjoyed racing with Rob and Anton in that.
It was great to watch as well. We saw some nice, close, clean battles, I think was the key part. And then turn one, just the commitment of yourself, throwing it up the inside and just trusting the car underneath you. As you say, only having 1 day's worth of, well, genuine practice for this event underneath your belt. And I think that was just paying due to where you finished. But like you say, it caught you out on the brakes, and I guess that's something that the Porsche is more or less renowned for, and how being maybe slightly unstable under braking. Was that something you were expecting going into the closing stages, like you mentioned with the tyre degradation, or was it just things that caught you off guard and, well, you couldn't really do much about it by the time it happened?
I've always sort of known that the Porsche is a touch sketchy on the brakes. It has a habit of snatching the brakes, unlike the full sort of thing with the carbon brakes it runs. And I knew it would be sketchy. I knew it would start getting a bit bad at the end of the race. Through the run, I was actually cranking the brake bar to click forward every now and again. So as I went into the hairpin, if it started locking the rears, I just started moving the brake bars forward. But when it finally caught me out, when Anton passed me, I wasn't expecting that. I pulled it down through the gears I'd done the previous lap, hit first, and it just rotated on me. And I wasn't going to make the lunge to get back in front of Anton. I wasn't going to do that to him, considering how great sportsmanship Rob showed at the start of the race when he let you back past after the little incident down in the hairpin. It kind of, it set a mindset for the race that you're not going to be sort of cheeky with things like that, and it's better off waiting, letting the other car go, and passing them in the right way.
Yeah, that's brilliant to hear and more importantly see as well. And let's hope that carries out towards the end of the season. But speaking of the rest of the season, we're going to Monza next, and that's a circuit which tends to favours the cars with maybe that slight extra edge in terms of top speed. And I think the Porsche maybe falls short in that department. It's really strong on acceleration, which I think is going to be quite key at Monza, coming out of the chicanes. Going into that, is that going to be, obviously you're going to have that extra bit of practice like you said you didn't have going into Sebring. Is that going to be something you maybe consider as well, adjusting setup slightly just to give you the best of both worlds in terms of acceleration and top speed?
No, I won't. I try not to let things like get into my head in regards to other cars being faster. I knew chasing Rob tonight that the BMW was always very good on its tyres, and the Porsche's never quite been that good. So I kind of just kept it in my head that not to push too hard, try and keep the tyres in good condition. Obviously, it didn't work out, but no, for Monza, it's going to be just keep the head down and get the practice in. I won't compromise the setup to get the straight line speed out of the car, because otherwise you end up fighting it, and it's an hour and a half race, not a 20-minute half-hour sprint. So I'd rather the car stay stable. I had the setup pretty stable tonight, but it's just a tyre issue at the end of the run. So we'll get our head down for Monza, and I think we'll be all right.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us in the commentary box. But before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to shout out?
Obviously, a big shout out to Rob, Luxim24, Paul Gordon, Sim Stickers, Strafer Tools, all the sponsors that keep us on the track, keep us going, and thanks to you guys as well, and Simracersworld for running such a great quality league.
No problem at all. So once again, well done tonight, and thank you very much for joining me and Peter in the commentary box.
Thank you very much, Jack. Good to have you.
That was Mr. Billy Fletcher crossing the line in P3 overall, P1 in class, more importantly. But Peter, to sort of sum up the night, that was a busy old race, and I think Monza's going to almost turn everything on its head because it's a very different circuit to Sebring, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. I mean, Sebring is so unique. It's such a technical circuit. We've heard a lot of guys talk about some who were happy with their setup, some who weren't, and it's just vital at Sebring. One thing we also saw today was a few drivers maybe perhaps struggling under braking, particularly when the tyres were going off. And as we alluded to during the broadcast, Monza is there's two things that are really important at Monza: straight line speed and braking. So I think turn one is obviously notorious for late braking maneuvers and sometimes a little bit too late braking maneuvers. So I have to say I can't wait. I absolutely love GTE sports car racing, particularly the RSR, the Ferrari, the Ford. It's just fantastic variety and really promotes good racing. So yeah, I'm very excited to get over to Monza in 2 weeks' time.
I really am as well. I think it's going to be a great showing, but we might also have the possibility of new faces in the mix. Because before we end the stream, we still have spots available in the GT Evo League. So the event you watched tonight, which was round one of the GT Evo series. And if you do want to get involved, please do or don't hesitate to head over to one of the Simracersworld social media pages, or go to the Simracersworld website, and you'll find all the information there to get involved. And one thing that we didn't really mention tonight, but I know it's only round one, but going towards the end of the season, this could be on the drivers' sort of agendas. The top 8 in the Evo League get promoted to the Pro Series, and the bottom 8 in the Pro Series drop back to the Evo. So it really does keep everything nice and close, doesn't it?
Oh, that is very exciting. It's going to be like relegation day. I have to say, I'm not a football person, but I can get on board with this in the driving side. It'll be a bit like the qualifying for the Indy 500, the drop day when some drivers don't make the show. So yeah, very exciting. And of course, with such a lot, if you've missed round one, not a problem. Come in and join us. And I think you'll probably agree with me, Jack. If you're planning on making an entry into the series, make a really nice eye-catching livery, and you'll get lots of TV time from Jack and I.
That is very true. You find a nice livery, and we've got to look at it as much as we can. But we've sadly got to round out the night, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure for me to commentate with the brilliant Peter MacKay as always. But any final words, Peter?
Just to say thank you so much to everyone for tuning into the broadcast. Of course, this is a new series for Simracersworld. And also, if you enjoy this, don't forget to join myself, Jack, and Chaz on Sunday. Our sponsor, Porsche Sport, of course, taking part as well in the Porsche Club of Great Britain Sim Racing Series, which is broadcast live here on Simracersworld. So that's Sunday afternoon. We're off, funnily enough, we're off to Zandvoort in Holland on Sunday with the 911 GT3 Cup cars. And I believe we have the return of Matt Dorrington, our round one standout driver. So could be a good race on Sunday.
It really is shaping up to be, but thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me and Peter MacKay for round one of the Simracersworld GT Evo series here on Simracersworld TV. But like Peter said, we will really look forward to seeing you this Sunday for the Porsche Club GB Sim Racing Series at Zandvoort. But other than that, thank you very much for joining me and Peter here on Simracersworld TV. And other than that, enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody.